In the quiet halls of ancient cathedrals, where sunlight spills through stained glass like liquid gold, there exists a world most of us cannot see. The surface of a painting, the delicate brushstrokes of a fresco, the ornate margins of a manuscript, these are not merely decorative. They are whispers from the past, carefully concealed messages that have endured centuries of candle smoke, dust, and human neglect. To the untrained eye, they might appear as minor details, eccentricities, or the flourish of an artist's hand. Yet to those who look closely, to those willing to pause and peer into the subtle corners of these sacred works, a secret language emerges. It is a language not spoken aloud, a dialogue that stretches across time, inviting us to witness what was never meant to be seen by all. Who were these messages meant for? Perhaps they were for the pious few, the initiates, those who understood the hidden codes of faith and power. Perhaps they were for future generations, a silent plea or a warning from artists long gone. Every symbol, every hidden figure, every intricate motif carries intention. A simple hand gesture, the curve of a cloak, the glimmer of light reflecting. On a chalice, these are all threads in a tapestry of secrecy. Some messages are devotional, echoing the artist's reverence for the divine. Others are rebellious, daring to challenge authority, question dogma, or hide truths too dangerous to declare openly. And some perhaps are playful, visual riddles left as gifts to those curious enough to decipher them. As you begin this journey through the hidden layers of religious art, imagine stepping softly into a space where time slows. Hear the hush of centuries pressing against the walls, feel the weight of history in the air, and sense the quiet pulse of human creativity and devotion. These artworks are alive in ways that textbooks and museum labels can never convey. They speak through the shadows cast by a flickering candle, through the precise geometry of a mandorla, through the unexpected placement of a tiny, almost invisible figure in the corner of a grand scene. Each choice an artist made, deliberate or secret, is a key. Each detail is a doorway into a story that has been waiting patiently for eyes capable of noticing. It is tempting to dismiss these hidden messages as mere superstition or eccentricity. After all, centuries of human activity have coated our understanding with assumptions, oversimplifications, and distractions. But consider for a moment that these messages were not meant to shout. They were meant to whisper. They were meant to reward patience, contemplation, and attention to nuance. They ask us not to merely see, but to observe. They ask us to question, to wonder, to reconsider the boundaries between art, devotion, and human expression. Why did artists hide these truths? Was it fear of persecution, devotion to secret knowledge, or simply the joy of embedding riddles in sacred spaces? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach, yet the pursuit of understanding becomes part of the experience itself. Look closely at a medieval painting, and you might notice the faint outline of a tiny letter hidden in a fold of a robe. Peer at the margins of an illuminated manuscript, and there may be minuscule figures, strange symbols, or even entire miniature narratives that seem to exist in a world parallel to the main scene. Examine the geometry of a cathedral's ceiling, and you may discover deliberate proportions and alignments designed to convey theological truths invisible to the casual observer. Light, color, shape, gesture. Every element is carefully orchestrated, and within these orchestrations, a hidden dialogue thrives. Each piece of art becomes a coded conversation between the creator and the initiated viewer, stretching across centuries, a testament to human ingenuity and curiosity. And yet, there is more than intellectual intrigue here. There is something deeply emotional, almost uncanny, about encountering these hidden messages. To realize that someone long dead anticipated your gaze, that they deliberately left a secret for you to uncover, evokes both wonder and humility. You are no longer merely an observer. You are part of a silent pact, a chain of perception linking artist, patron, and viewer across time. This awareness transforms the act of looking into an almost meditative experience, where attention itself becomes an act of devotion, of connection. In this quiet communion, the boundary between past and present blurs, and the hidden messages pulse faintly, as if alive, whispering secrets meant for ears attuned to subtlety. Philosophical questions naturally arise. What does it mean to hide something in plain sight? Is secrecy a form of reverence, a protective measure, or a means of control? Can a hidden message hold the same weight as one declared openly, or does its value lie precisely in its subtlety? The artists who embedded these messages operated in worlds governed by faith, power, and strict social hierarchies. Their hidden choices were statements, sometimes bold, sometimes tentative, always deliberate. And now, standing centuries later, we are invited to trace their intentions, to uncover the meaning behind the faintest line, the smallest shadow, the quietest symbol. As we begin our exploration of 17 such hidden messages scattered across historical religious art, prepare to see the familiar transformed. Every brushstroke may conceal more than meets the eye. Every statue may whisper stories not found in guidebooks. These messages are invitations to look deeper, to question assumptions, to feel the pulse of human creativity, devotion, and even rebellion. With patience, curiosity, and a willingness to let wonder guide your gaze, you will witness a layer of history invisible to most. And in this invisible layer, you will discover a world both beautiful and enigmatic, where secrets endure, waiting for the attentive eye to awaken them. So step quietly into this luminous world, where light and shadow converse, where color and form conceal, and where the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. In the following journey, each hidden message we uncover will reveal not only the skill and imagination of its creator, but also the intricate dance between secrecy, devotion, and expression, the surface of a painting, the fold of a robe, the edge of a manuscript. All are doors into a silent dialogue spanning centuries. And as you follow, remember, the secrets you are about to uncover are not just relics of the past. They are echoes, whispers and invitations, waiting for your gaze to meet them fully. In the hushed stillness of medieval scriptoriums, where sunlight barely pierced the narrow windows and the air smelled of ink, parchment, and candle wax, a quiet, almost imperceptible world of secrets thrived. Here, amid the disciplined repetition of letters and symbols, scribes bent over their work with painstaking care, each movement deliberate, almost ritualistic. At first glance, the illuminated manuscripts they produced appeared as grand, pious creations, ornate depictions of saints, angels, and sacred narratives. Their beauty was obvious, dazzling even, with gold leaf catching the flicker of candlelight, intricate miniature paintings nestled between lines of text. Yet beneath this apparent simplicity, in the narrow borders of the page, lay messages invisible to most eyes, tiny, concealed writings that only the most patient and attentive observer might discover. These marginalia were the hidden whispers of history, the personal reflections, prayers, and subtle commentaries of those who had shaped the intellectual and spiritual culture of their time. These microtexts were rarely accidental. Scribes, monks, and illuminators were often deeply aware of the world they inhabited, a world governed by church authority, social hierarchy, and political intrigue. The margins of manuscripts offered a secret canvas, a place where a quiet rebellion could be written, a subtle prayer whispered, or a playful jest hidden. Here, a miniature plea for divine guidance might sit just beneath a saint's painted robe, or a tiny commentary about a king's. Folly could curve delicately along the edge of a page. Each mark was intentional, precise, and imbued with layers of meaning. In a culture where the spoken word was policed and the written word sanctified, the margins became a sanctuary for secrets, a liminal space between devotion and defiance. The fascination with these marginal messages lies not just in their hidden nature but in their intimacy. Unlike the main body of the manuscript, which addressed a broader audience, whether congregation, patron, or scholar, these microtexts often carried the private voice of the scribe. Sometimes they were confessions, sometimes subtle criticisms, sometimes cryptic jokes. One might imagine a solitary monk late at night, candle guttering, dipping his quill in ink, and pausing to add a single word or phrase so tiny that it would escape the casual eye. Perhaps he was weary, frustrated by politics. In the monastery, Or perhaps he was simply playing with the idea of being remembered in secret. Whatever the reason, each edition was a human signature, a trace of personality in a world dominated by ritual and hierarchy. The placement of these hidden texts was deliberate and often symbolic. Words tucked along the edge of a page could mirror the main text, creating a dialogue between the visible and the invisible, between public pronouncement and private reflection. Sometimes these marginalia were responses to the primary content, a scribbled exclamation in the margin reacting to a saintly miracle, a miniature lament for suffering that mirrored the main narrative, or even a subtle critique of theological arguments. The very act of writing in the margin implied duality. The scribe engaged with the sacred, yet at the same time he engaged with himself, his conscience, or the politics of his environment. These marginal messages were like a whisper in a cathedral. They were there to be heard, but only if one leaned in closely, attuned to nuance. In some manuscripts, these tiny words were prayers or blessings, secret invocations meant to protect the text, the reader, or even the scribe himself. A marginal note might call upon a saint for guidance or protection, asking that the manuscript survive the rigors of time, that it reach the eyes of the faithful uncorrupted. In other cases, marginalia served a communal purpose. A scribe could leave a coded message to a successor, a subtle instruction about interpretation, or a warning about political sensitivities. These hidden texts were often in Latin, but sometimes they were in vernacular languages or even cryptic symbols, accessible only to those with the key to decode them. In essence, the margins functioned as a parallel universe within the manuscript, a realm of secrecy where devotion, intellect, and mischief could coexist. The very act of hiding messages in plain sight reflects an intricate balance of courage and caution, in an era where deviation from orthodoxy could invite censure or worse. Scribes were acutely aware of the dangers of explicit criticism or dissent. The margins allowed for a form of discreet communication, a way to express an opinion or record a thought without drawing public attention. One can imagine the thrill, even the quiet anxiety, of inscribing a veiled critique of authority in a place designed to escape notice. Marginal texts could convey discontent, commentary on political events, or even personal grievances with astonishing subtlety. In this way, manuscripts became repositories not only of religious and scholarly knowledge, but also of human emotion, clandestine expression, and historical nuance. Consider a manuscript depicting the lives of saints. The central panels showcase miracles, holy gestures, and divine intervention. But in the margins, the scribe may have added tiny sketches, perhaps a mischievous figure, a hidden animal, or a miniature commentary on the depicted events. These elements might seem playful, even trivial, yet they are laden with meaning, reflecting both the creativity and the inner life of the artist. Scholars studying marginalia have discovered entire networks of hidden symbolism, from encoded dates of historical events to subtle nods to political alliances. These seemingly inconsequential scribbles are in fact windows into the minds of those who produce them, revealing a richer, more complex tapestry than the main text alone can convey. The psychological dimension of these hidden texts is also compelling. By hiding words in the margins, scribes created a form of dialogue with future readers, an intimate conversation across centuries. They anticipated someone patient enough to notice, someone curious enough to look closer. In doing so, they blurred the boundaries between past and present, author and audience, public and private. This act transforms the experience of viewing a manuscript into a participatory one. Each observer becomes a detective, piecing together subtle hints, decoding gestures, and reconstructing messages that were never intended for immediate consumption. The thrill of discovery, the realization that one is seeing something no one else has noticed for hundreds of years, is part of the magic. The margins themselves were often visually integrated with the manuscript, forming delicate frames, winding vines, and ornate geometric patterns. Within these frames, microtext could blend seamlessly with illustrations, becoming almost invisible. A single letter might nestle into the curl of a leaf, a word might trace the contour of a miniature bird, and a line of prayer might flow along a border so slender it would be overlooked without careful scrutiny. This interplay between text and image enhanced the secrecy of the message, while also demonstrating the scribe's mastery of composition. The margins were not a mere afterthought. They were an essential space where narrative, decoration, and secrecy intertwined, inviting the attentive eye to discover layers of meaning hidden in plain sight. Ultimately, the hidden messages in manuscript margins are a testament to the ingenuity, devotion, and complexity of their creators. They reveal a world where art and writing were not simply tools of communication, but instruments of subtlety, secrecy, and personal expression. Every tiny word, every hidden symbol, every playful sketch in the margins speaks to a human desire to be seen, to be remembered, and to communicate beyond the obvious. They remind us that even in the most rigidly structured societies, creativity found a way to whisper, to challenge, and to endure. And as we trace these hidden texts, as we lean closer to read the nearly invisible letters and symbols, we become part of this secret chain, a witness to centuries of thought, devotion, and quiet courage. To encounter these marginal messages is to engage in a form of time travel, to step into the mind of someone long gone, and experience their private thoughts alongside the sacred narrative. It is to realize that history is not only written in grand events and monumental actions, but also in the tiniest details, in the quiet spaces where only a discerning eye can see. In these margins, devotion and secrecy coexist, playfulness and reverence intertwine, and human ingenuity shines in subtle brilliance. By paying attention to the hidden corners of manuscripts, we reconnect with the past in a profoundly intimate way, discovering that the most extraordinary messages are sometimes those that hide where we least expect them. In the hushed sanctuaries of Renaissance cathedrals, where sunlight filters through colored glass and illuminates these centuries-old frescoes, one might pause and wonder why certain figures' hands are posed in a particular way. At first glance, they appear natural, almost casual, yet a closer look reveals a hidden dimension. Hands in religious paintings often carry meanings far beyond the obvious. They are silent messengers, subtle instruments of communication that transmit blessing, caution, or encoded guidance to the perceptive observer. In these gestures, the artist speaks without words, weaving a language of fingers, palms, and subtle angles that resonates across time and culture. The coded hand is a mystery waiting to be unraveled, and within its curves and stretches lies mastery of devotion, symbolism, and the human desire to communicate secrets in plain sight. To understand this hidden language, one must first consider the cultural and spiritual context of the period. During the Renaissance, art was not merely decorative, it was instructional, moral, and sacred. Artists were acutely aware that their work served multiple purposes, inspiring faith, demonstrating mastery, and sometimes conveying messages meant for the initiated, those trained to read beyond the surface. Hands were one of the most versatile tools for such subtlety. A raised palm could signify blessing or invitation, a pointed finger might indicate judgment or warning. A delicately intertwined set of fingers could suggest secrecy, union, or divine mystery. Each position was deliberate, a choreography of the soul expressed through form, and the careful observer, attuned to this silent vocabulary, could discern layers of meaning invisible to the casual eye. Consider, for example, the classical depiction of Christ in the Renaissance. His right hand is often raised, two fingers extended while the others curl inward, a gesture both familiar and profoundly symbolic. To the lay viewer, it may appear as a simple blessing, a conventional pose repeated across churches and manuscripts. Yet scholars have long recognized that this configuration carries multiple layers of meaning. It can signify the dual nature of Christ, human and divine, or evoke the Holy Trinity. A visual shorthand for deep theological principles. The hand is a cipher, a quiet declaration of faith embedded within the sacred narrative. Every viewer, whether conscious of the symbolism or not, feels the resonance of that gesture, and for those who understand, it becomes a key unlocking hidden truths within the artwork. Hands also serve as guides through complex compositions, directing attention to significant elements or narrative moments. In the Last Supper paintings of the period, the positioning of hands communicates emotion, tension, and intention with exquisite subtlety. One disciple's hand might tremble with disbelief, another's extends in questioning, while Christ's hands, calm and deliberate, draw the viewer's eye to the Eucharistic bread, underscoring the theological center of the scene. These gestures are not random. They encode narrative and doctrinal emphasis, inviting the observer to follow the invisible currents of meaning beneath the surface. Through hands, artists weave an unspoken dialogue, bridging human perception and divine message in ways both intimate and universal. Yet the coded hand is not only a conduit of formal theology, it also carries personal and political undertones. Renaissance artists were keenly aware of the power of subtlety in an era when overt dissent or critique could be dangerous. By embedding hidden meanings in hand gestures, they could communicate loyalty, caution, or commentary without risking censure. A pointing finger might hint at Apatron's influence. A hand pressed to the heart could signify discreet devotion, or a gesture towards a marginal figure might encode a political or social critique. In this way, hands became vehicles for both devotion and subtle subversion, their silent language bridging the sacred and the human, the visible and the hidden. The expressive potential of hands extends beyond Christian art too. In depictions of saints, angels, and allegorical figures, gestures convey nuanced emotional states. Humility, sorrow, ecstasy, and reverence are all articulated through careful positioning. A saint kneeling with hands pressed together demonstrates penitence. A haloed figure raising one hand subtly guides attention to heaven. A delicate touch to the lips might suggest silence, secrecy, or contemplation. Each gesture, although composed and static in the medium of paint, carries the weight of motion and intention, a frozen dance that communicates in a language as old as art itself. Observers trained in iconography or sensitive to nuance can read these gestures almost as fluently as text, unlocking layers of meaning that remain invisible to those who look superficially. Interestingly, some gestures were deliberately ambiguous, intended to provoke reflection or contemplation. A hand pointing slightly off-center, a finger bent in an unusual angle, or the overlapping of fingers in unexpected ways invites the observer to pause and question. Was this an artistic flourish, or does it contain a hidden message? Scholars have argued that such ambiguity is intentional. It creates a quiet tension, a dialogue between the work and the viewer, where discovery becomes a form of participation. In this sense, the hand is not merely expressive, it is interactive, a subtle invitation to engage with the artwork at a deeper level, to notice, to wonder, and to interpret. Renaissance artists were not alone in their fascination with hands as carriers of hidden meaning. Across centuries and cultures, hands have been potent symbols, both sacred and secular. In Buddhist and Hindu art, mudras, specific hand positions, communicate spiritual states, moral guidance, and philosophical principles. In Islamic calligraphy and manuscript illumination, stylized hands sometimes gesture toward divine truth or point to key textual elements. Even in more secular traditions, subtle hand positions convey hierarchy, consent, and personal intention. The Renaissance hand then exists within a broader human understanding of hands as symbols, tools, and conveyors of hidden knowledge, a universal language rendered through gesture and form. The act of reading hands in art requires patience and attentiveness. Unlike words, which carry explicit meaning, gestures operate on multiple levels: literal, symbolic, spiritual, and emotional. A single hand can express blessing, authority, secrecy, or critique simultaneously, and its interpretation may shift depending on surrounding elements, context, and the observer's knowledge. To study these gestures is to engage in an almost meditative practice to slow down, focus, and let the subtleties of the image emerge gradually. There is a quiet thrill in recognizing a gesture that has been overlooked for centuries, a sense of intimate communion with the artist, the subject, and the silent, history encoded in the composition. One particularly evocative example can be found in the paintings of Leonardo da Vinci. In his depictions of the Madonna and Child, hands convey tenderness, protection, and connection. The way Mary's fingers curve around the infant, the slight tension in Christ's tiny hand reaching outward, and the gentle overlap of fingers communicate profound emotional depth. Yet beneath this tenderness, there may be hidden symbols encoded in the gestures, theological ideas about incarnation, subtle nods to patrons, or visual patterns resonating with classical thought. Each hand becomes a nexus of meaning, layered with intent, symbolism, and human expression. To observe these hands is to participate in a centuries-long conversation between artist, subject, and observer. The coded hand also reminds us of the human desire to communicate subtly, to leave messages that transcend the immediate and the obvious. It is a quiet assertion of agency. Even within rigid religious or political structures, the artist could exert influence, convey intention, or record private thought. A hand lifted in blessing may also be a statement of hope, a gesture of coded dissent, or an invitation to reflect. The observer who notices these gestures becomes a participant in a hidden dialogue, discovering meanings that were never meant to be broadcast yet persist, like whispers in a cathedral, through the centuries. Ultimately, the study of symbolic hand gestures in religious art is a journey into subtlety, patience, and perception. Each gesture carries multiple layers of significance: spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and historical. They remind us that art is not only about what is seen, but also about what is deliberately concealed, suggested, or encoded. The hands that reach, point, or bless are more than anatomical features. They are carriers of meaning, vessels of human intention, and silent guides into the hidden dimensions of faith, creativity, and expression. By observing these coded hands, we are invited into a deeper understanding not only of the art itself, but of the minds and hearts of those who created it. We glimpse devotion, playfulness, caution, and brilliance, all within a single gesture. The hands in these paintings are both ordinary and extraordinary, common enough to pass unnoticed by the casual eye, yet profound enough to reveal entire worlds of thought, feeling, and secrecy to the attentive observer. And as we trace their lines, follow their direction, and contemplate their angles, we participate in a timeless conversation, a dialogue that links us, across centuries, to artists, saints, and patrons through the eloquence of a single subtle hand. In the quiet dimness of a cathedral, or the serene hush of a museum gallery, one might wander past centuries-old paintings and frescoes, captivated by color, composition, and the play of light across the canvas. Yet if one slows, squints slightly, or tilts their head to perceive the nuances of shadow and form, a startling realization may occur. The eyes in these artworks are not always what they seem. Beyond the overt gaze of saints, angels, or the Christ child, artists sometimes embedded additional hidden eyes within shadows, folds of fabric, reflections in water, or intricate patterns of architecture and foliage. These concealed eyes watch, silently and unrelentingly, creating a subtle layer of awareness, a hidden dialogue between the artwork and the observer. They are reminders of divine presence, of moral oversight, or perhaps even playful enigmas left for the attentive viewer to discover. The phenomenon of hidden eyes is both artistic and symbolic. In religious art, the eye has long served as a metaphor for knowledge, vigilance, and divine omniscience. To see and to be seen is a recurring theme in theology and philosophy. The faithful are watched by higher powers, their actions observed, their intentions known. Yet beyond these spiritual interpretations, hidden eyes also reflect a fascination with perception itself, an acknowledgement that the world of the canvas is layered, complex, and alive with meaning. By placing eyes where they might initially go unnoticed, within the texture of a garment, the curl of a wave, or the patterning of a decorative border, artists invite the observer to slow down, to examine, to see beyond the apparent. Each hidden eye becomes a visual whisper, an intimate reminder that attention itself is a form of engagement, that discovery is possible for those patient and perceptive enough to look closely. Consider, for example, the works of Hieronymus Bosch, whose densely populated fantastical scenes teem with oddities and surprises. Among grotesque creatures, tormented souls, and surreal landscapes, One may discern eyes placed almost imperceptibly in unexpected locations. They peek from the creases of twisted fabric, nestle within architectural details, or peer through clouds and flames. These hidden eyes serve multiple purposes. They heighten the sense of vigilance, evoke an eerie sensation of being watched, and draw the observer into a more intimate engagement with the painting. The more one studies the composition, the more these concealed observers reveal themselves, creating a dialogue between the artist's intention and the viewer's perception. Each newly discovered eye is a revelation, a quiet thrill, a bridge connecting centuries of artistic intention with contemporary curiosity. Hidden eyes are not limited to fantastical or allegorical works. They appear in the sacred and solemn art of the Renaissance as well. In portraits of saints or biblical scenes, one may notice eyes subtly embedded in the folds of robes, behind the curvature of halos, or within the patterns of embroidered textiles. These eyes are not always literal. Sometimes they are suggested by the interplay of light and shadow, the clever use of pattern and contour. Yet their effect is unmistakable. They produce a sense of presence, of observation, of consciousness beyond what is overtly depicted. In a sense, these concealed eyes act as intermediaries between the spiritual and the earthly realms, hinting at a reality that coexists with, yet remains invisible beneath, the surface of the visible world. The use of hidden eyes is also a testament to the skill and ingenuity of the artists. To integrate a hidden eye seamlessly within a larger composition requires both technical mastery and conceptual subtlety. The artist must balance concealment with visibility. The eye must remain undetected by the casual viewer, yet sufficiently distinct to be recognized by one who observes closely. This delicate equilibrium creates a dynamic tension within the artwork. It transforms the act of viewing into a participatory experience where discovery becomes an intimate interaction and the observer becomes a collaborator in the unveiling of meaning. To find a hidden eye is to experience a small epiphany, a moment of connection with the artist's vision and the layers of thought that lie beneath the visible surface. Symbolically, hidden eyes can communicate a range of messages. In some cases, they may signify divine surveillance, reminding viewers that nothing escapes spiritual awareness. In others, they may function as moral or ethical cues, prompting reflection on behavior, intention, or devotion. Hidden eyes can also serve as protective symbols, warding off evil or maintaining the sanctity of the depicted scene. In secular or semi-sacred works, they may convey humor, critique, or subversive commentary, allowing the artist to embed a personal or political message discreetly. Whatever the intention, the effect is mesmerizing. The viewer becomes acutely aware of their own gaze, the act of looking, and the possibility that observation itself carries meaning and consequence. The psychological impact of hidden eyes is profound. There is an inherent unease in realizing one is being watched, even by a symbol embedded within paint. This subtle eeriness is compounded by the meticulous craftsmanship of the works in which they appear. The hidden eye does not scream for attention. It lingers, patient, waiting to be perceived. When discovered, it evokes both wonder and a sense of intimacy, as if the observer has been let in on a secret that has persisted for centuries. This dual sensation, unease and fascination, is precisely what makes these hidden eyes so compelling, transforming the act of viewing art into a quiet journey of discovery, reflection, and emotional resonance. Hidden eyes also invite philosophical reflection on perception and reality. What does it mean to see? What does it mean to be seen? In embedding additional eyes within their works, artists challenge the observer to reconsider the boundaries between visible and invisible, conscious and subconscious, sacred and profane. They create layers of meaning that require careful attention and thoughtful interpretation, suggesting that understanding art, and perhaps understanding the world itself, requires patience, observation, and an awareness of subtle signals. Each hidden eye becomes a reminder that the visible world is rarely as simple as it seems, that beneath surfaces lie complexity, intention, and mystery waiting to be revealed. In some instances, hidden eyes are also a playful gesture, an invitation to the curious to explore the artwork more thoroughly. A mischievous eye in the corner of a painting may be the artist's way of saying, "Look closer, pay attention, there is more here than meets the eye." These visual Easter eggs transform the observer's experience into a participatory adventure. They encourage curiosity, reward attentiveness, and deepen engagement with the artwork. The observer becomes a seeker, piecing together hidden patterns, following subtle cues, and uncovering layers of meaning that would otherwise remain invisible. In this way, hidden eyes create a connection that transcends time, a quiet, almost intimate exchange between artist and observer, where discovery is both an intellectual and emotional thrill. The placement of hidden eyes is often strategic, integrated seamlessly into composition, color, and form. They might appear in reflective surfaces, mirrors, water, or polished metal, allowing for a subtle doubling effect, or nestled within shadows, where their perception requires careful attention. Some eyes are repeated, forming patterns or sequences that hint at narrative or symbolic significance. Others are singular and isolated, offering a solitary gaze that intensifies the feeling of being watched. Across these variations, the principle remains the same. The hidden eye is a deliberate, meaningful insertion, a silent interlocutor in the visual dialogue between artist, subject, and observer. Examples abound in both religious and secular contexts. In depictions of the Virgin and Child, one might detect eyes partially concealed in the flowing drapery, or in the floral patterns surrounding a halo. In apocalyptic or visionary works, hidden eyes in clouds or flames serve as reminders of divine omniscience and the inescapable gaze of higher powers. Even in portraits, where realism and likeness dominate, subtle eyes in the background or incorporated into decorative elements suggest vigilance, secrecy, or protection. Across styles, periods, and regions, the hidden eye persists as a universal motif, a testament to humanity's fascination with perception, observation, and the unseen layers of reality. Ultimately, the hidden eyes within artwork remind us that seeing is both an act of perception and an invitation to reflection. They transform passive observation into active engagement, encouraging the viewer to look beyond the obvious and consider the underlying currents of meaning. They evoke wonder, unease, and curiosity, guiding the observer to discover details that deepen understanding and amplify emotional resonance. Each concealed eye becomes a bridge between centuries, connecting the artist's intention with the present-day observer's discovery, a testament to the enduring power of subtlety, craftsmanship, and symbolic thinking. In discovering these hidden eyes, we are reminded that art is more than representation. It is a dialogue across time. Each eye that watches from shadow or fabric, each gaze embedded within a reflection or pattern, is a whisper from the past, a subtle prompt to see more deeply, think more carefully, and engage more fully. The artist has left a trail, a network of quiet watchers embedded within the canvas, challenging us to perceive not only what is shown, but also what is intentionally concealed. And as we follow these eyes, as we let them guide our vision and our contemplation, we become participants in a silent narrative, a centuries-spanning conversation about perception, presence, and the profound mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of the visible world. Step quietly into a Renaissance chapel, or the dim-lit corner of a medieval manuscript, and allow your eyes to wander across the carefully structured forms of the artwork. At first, the geometric arrangements may seem decorative, almost mathematical, yet these patterns hold a deeper significance. Triangles, circles, spirals, and precise proportions are not merely aesthetic choices. They are the language of the sacred, a visual code through which artists and architects communicated spiritual truths, philosophical principles, and the hidden order of the universe. Sacred geometry, subtle, deliberate, and elegant, becomes a conduit through which human perception brushes against the infinite, and through which divine presence asserts itself quietly within form. Theos of geometry in religious compositions reflects a worldview in which the cosmos itself is ordered, harmonious, and intelligible. Medieval and Renaissance artists and architects were often steeped in both religious doctrine and classical philosophy, drawing on the writings of Plato, Pythagoras, and Euclid. For them, geometry was not abstract or merely decorative. It was a reflection of cosmic law, a bridge between the visible and the invisible, a means to align human perception with divine order. Circles suggested eternity, completeness, and unity. Triangles evoked the Holy Trinity, stability, and the union of mind, body, and spirit. Spirals suggested the unfolding of creation, the path of spiritual ascent, or the cyclical nature of life. These shapes were not randomly placed. They were carefully woven into every aspect of composition, guiding the eye, structuring the narrative, and embedding layers of meaning that went unnoticed by the casual observer. Consider the iconic compositions of Leonardo da Vinci, whose paintings exemplify a marriage of artistic mastery and mathematical precision. In the Vitruvian Man, geometry underpins the human form, aligning the figure within perfect circles and squares to demonstrate the harmony between man and the cosmos. Though not a religious painting in the traditional sense, it embodies principles central to sacred art: proportion, balance, and the reflection of universal law in human creation. In Leonardo's religious works, the same meticulous geometric thinking appears subtly. The arrangement of figures, the alignment of architectural features, and even the spatial relationship of hands and eyes all conform to underlying patterns that evoke order, divinity, and hidden instruction. These geometric choices are not immediately apparent. They require attentive viewing, a willingness to look beyond surface beauty to the hidden scaffolding beneath. Circles are among the most prevalent symbols in sacred geometry. Their perfection, having no beginning or end, evokes eternity and the divine. Halos surrounding saints, celestial spheres depicted in manuscripts, and circular patterns in stained glass all reflect this symbolism. Yet sometimes circles are hidden, embedded in patterns that seem ornamental until one discerns their exact proportion and placement. An observer who notices these circles may suddenly perceive a new layer of intentionality in the composition. The artist is guiding the viewer's gaze along curves that reinforce theological concepts, subtly teaching and inspiring through the rhythm of form itself. In this sense, geometry functions as a quiet pedagogy, a visual curriculum of sacred knowledge conveyed without a single written word. Triangles, too, hold profound significance in religious artwork. The threefold structure evokes the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but also carries broader symbolic associations with harmony, stability, and balance. In many paintings, triangles are embedded in the arrangement of figures. The positioning of three central characters, the incline of a hand, or the convergence of architectural lines, forms a subtle triangle that directs the eye and conveys spiritual meaning. Even the negative space between elements may form triangular patterns, suggesting that divine order exists not only in what is depicted, but also in what is left unshown, the space between forms. Observing the C triangles encourages the viewer to contemplate unity, interconnectedness, and the underlying principles that structure both the work of art and the cosmos itself. Spirals and concentric forms also appear frequently, evoking cycles of creation, spiritual ascent, or the unfolding of divine wisdom. In manuscripts, tiny spirals may appear in marginal decoration, subtly reinforcing theological themes. In larger architectural works, spiral motifs can guide attention upward, drawing the eye toward heavens or sacred focal points. These forms suggest movement within stillness, the dynamic unfolding of meaning even within a static image. Spirals invite contemplation, encouraging viewers to follow their curves inward or outward, tracing the invisible path of spiritual insight and discovering a sense of meditation in the rhythm of the composition. Sacred geometry also functions as a mnemonic device, encoding philosophical principles into visual form. Artists and architects often operated in an intellectual environment where literacy was limited, yet symbolic understanding could be communicated through pattern, proportion, and repetition. By embedding geometric forms, the creator could encode complex theological and philosophical ideas within the structure of the artwork itself. For instance, a pentagram or a sequence of triangles might suggest divine perfection, moral guidance, or the alignment of earthly actions with heavenly law. Viewers familiar with these codes, clerics, scholars, or initiates, could read the geometry as a subtle lesson, while others would absorb its influence unconsciously, guided by proportion and balance toward awe and contemplation. The interplay of light and shadow often amplifies the effect of sacred geometry. In stained glass windows, the circular and triangular motifs are illuminated as sunlight shifts through the day, casting intricate patterns onto floors and walls. Frescoes may use architectural lines and perspective to create hidden alignments that reveal themselves only when viewed from particular angles. These dynamic interactions between geometry and light remind us that sacred design is not static. It is responsive, alive, and deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the world in which it exists. The observer who engages with these shifts discovers layers of meaning that extend beyond form into experience, perception, and even emotion. Geometry, also, serves as a bridge between human and divine experience. In churches and cathedrals, floor plans frequently reflect geometric harmony. The placement of aisles, chapels, and altars conforms to proportional rules that echo patterns found in nature and the cosmos. Entering such a space, the visitor may feel an almost subconscious sense of balance, order, and reverence, guided by hidden principles embedded in the very structure of the building. In paintings, similar principles operate on a smaller scale. The alignment of figures, the interplay of spatial forms, and the use of perspective create a coherent structure that conveys not only aesthetic beauty, but also spiritual intention. Sacred. Geometry, therefore, is both an intellectual and an emotional conduit, subtly shaping perception and understanding. Meditation on these hidden geometric forms encourages contemplation beyond the immediate subject of the artwork. A triangle within a Madonna scene, a hidden circle within a decorative border, or a spiral embedded in a halo directs the viewer's mind toward abstract concepts: eternity, unity, divine law, and moral alignment. The observer is drawn into reflection, invited to perceive not only the physical forms, but also the principles and mysteries that structure reality itself. Geometry thus becomes a tool for spiritual engagement, a quiet guide leading eyes, minds, and hearts toward the contemplation of higher truths. Interestingly, sacred geometry often interacts with other hidden messages within artwork. A triangle might align with a hand gesture. A circle might encompass a hidden inscription. A spiral may guide attention toward a subtle reflection or pattern of light. These layered correspondences suggest that geometry was never an isolated element, but part of an integrated system of meaning. The observant viewer discovers that the forms, symbols, and gestures operate in concert, creating a multi-dimensional dialogue between image, symbol, and spiritual principle. In decoding this system, one participates in a centuries-old practice of attentiveness, contemplation, and discovery. Ultimately, the hidden geometry of religious art teaches us to see beyond the surface, to recognize intention, proportion, and harmony as forms of sacred expression. It reminds us that beauty is often inseparable from meaning, that order reflects both human ingenuity and divine inspiration, and that the act of observation itself can be transformative. When we notice the subtle triangles, circles, and spirals embedded in compositions, we engage in a meditative dialogue with the past, connecting with artists and thinkers who sought to encode cosmic truths in forms that speak across time. To study sacred geometry is to cultivate patience, sensitivity, and awareness. Each carefully placed form, each hidden alignment, each spiral or proportional relationship is a quiet testament to the artist's reverence, intellect, and spiritual insight. By attuning ourselves to these patterns, we uncover a dimension of meaning that exists beyond narrative, beyond decoration, and beyond the immediately visible. The geometry of the divine invites us to slow down, to observe and to meditate on the harmony and order that underpin both art and the universe itself. In the quiet of observation, we realize that geometry is not merely a tool, it is a bridge. It links human creativity with cosmic principles, embeds spiritual wisdom within earthly forms, and transforms ordinary perception into an act of wonder and reflection. The triangles, circles, and spirals of sacred art are not just symbols, they are invitations to look deeper, to contemplate, and to experience the resonance of divine order in the subtle, hidden structure of the world around us. And, in following these forms, tracing their patterns with our eyes and minds, we participate in a timeless meditative exploration, a dialogue between the human and the divine, encoded in the quiet, deliberate geometry of the sacred. Step softly into the hushed sanctuaries of medieval chapels or the quiet corners of Renaissance paintings, and notice how life subtly intertwines with art. Among the grand figures of saints, angels, and the Christ child, small animals often appear, almost unnoticed at first glance. A lamb grazing at the foot of a cross, a serpent curled among rocks, a delicate bird perched on a windowsill. These creatures are not merely decorative, but purposeful symbols, carriers of hidden meaning carefully encoded by the artist. To the casual observer, they might seem incidental, whimsical touches, yet to the attentive eye, they whisper layered messages about morality, faith, resurrection, and even politics, bridging the visible world with the invisible, the ordinary with. The sacred animals have long held symbolic resonance in religious art, serving as conduits for ideas too subtle or sacred to express through words alone. The lamb, for example, evokes innocence, purity, and the sacrificial nature of Christ. Its presence in paintings is rarely coincidental. It reinforces theological principles, gently guiding the viewer toward reflection on devotion, redemption, and the intersection of human life with divine narrative. A single lamb at the margin of a dramatic crucifixion scene can transform the composition's meaning, offering a quiet counterpoint of hope and renewal amidst suffering. The artist, through this simple creature, communicates spiritual truths in ways both subtle and profound. Conversely, the serpent often represents caution, sin, or deceit. Hidden in shadowy corners, entwined around a tree, or slithering along a path, the serpent introduces tension and moral ambiguity. Its inclusion reminds viewers of the constant presence of temptation, of the moral choices that define human life. Unlike the overt gestures of saints or angels, these small creatures communicate indirectly through suggestion and context, inviting the observer to reflect and interpret. The serpent's presence is at once warning and narrative, a quiet tension woven seamlessly into the visual fabric of the artwork. Birds, too, carry intricate layers of meaning. A dove descending from above may signify the Holy Spirit, while a raven perched ominously can hint at death, vigilance, or hidden knowledge. Sometimes the choice of species is specific, informed by local legend, folklore, or theological interpretation. In marginalia, tiny birds may serve as playful visual puns, symbolic references, or mnemonic devices. The careful observer who notices these birds is rewarded not only with aesthetic pleasure, but with a richer understanding of the artist's layered intentions. In this sense, animals act as guides, connecting viewers to unseen moral, spiritual, or political dimensions within the work. The placement of animals in religious compositions is deliberate and often multifaceted. A lamb at the foot of a crucifix not only references Christ's sacrifice, but also creates compositional balance, leading the eye along a visual path from earthly life to divine narrative. Serpents lurking in shadows draw attention to hidden corners, prompting the viewer to consider what is overlooked, unspoken, or morally ambiguous. Birds, scattered or perched strategically, establish rhythm, movement, and points of reflection within the painting. Through these small yet potent symbols, the artist crafts a dynamic interplay between narrative, emotion, and spiritual reflection. In many cases, symbolic animals function as conduits for hidden political commentary. During periods of religious or civic unrest, artists subtly embedded messages about rulers, alliances, or moral authority. A serpent might represent a corrupt leader, a lamb could signify the oppressed faithful, and a flock of birds might allude to societal cohesion or unrest. These encoded meanings allowed artists to communicate complex ideas discreetly, preserving safety while exercising intellectual and creative agency. The animals become witnesses, storytellers, and moral compasses within the artwork, their silent presence resonating across centuries. Take, for example, the humble lamb in pastoral scenes. Beyond its spiritual associations, it can reflect notions of societal order, obedience, and moral behavior. In the context of a crowded religious tableau, the lamb may guide the viewer toward humility, patience, or reverence. Its orientation, gaze, and posture are deliberate, encouraging reflection on virtue and ethical conduct. Similarly, a serpent, its coiled form almost camouflaged among rocks or tree roots, introduces subtle tension. The observer must pay attention, notice the hidden presence, and interpret its significance. These creatures invite not only aesthetic appreciation but active engagement, turning passive viewing into contemplation and discovery. The size and subtlety of these animals amplify their intrigue. Tiny birds tucked into decorative patterns, minuscule lambs almost hidden in foliage, or serpents whose contours merge with shadow, require keen observation. Their hidden nature parallels the concept of concealed knowledge, a recurring theme in religious art. Wisdom, morality, and divine insight often lie just beyond immediate perception, awaiting those willing to look closely, to linger, and to reflect. Observing these animals becomes a meditative exercise, fostering both attentiveness and introspection. Animals also bridge narrative and emotion. A lamb's tender gaze toward the Christ child evokes empathy and a sense of innocence. A serpent's subtle menace introduces unease, a reminder of the ever-present tension between good and evil. Birds, in flight or perched, add rhythm, movement, and even a sense of transcendence. These symbols influence the viewer's emotional experience, shaping understanding and engagement with the artwork. They are both aesthetic devices and conveyors of hidden messages, simultaneously guiding perception and evoking feeling. In illuminated manuscripts, marginal animals often function as visual commentary or playful insertion. Tiny rabbits, foxes, or fantastical creatures might interact with the main narrative or occupy seemingly unrelated spaces, yet they carry symbolic resonance. Rabbits, for instance, can suggest fertility, renewal, or vulnerability. Foxes may connote cunning or deception. Their presence, often subtle and almost whimsical, adds texture to the composition while preserving layers of meaning accessible only to the observant viewer. This dual function, ornamentation and symbolism, is a hallmark of the artistry of hidden animals, blending aesthetics with layered communication. Across cultures, the symbolic use of animals reveals common threads in human understanding. The eye, lamb, serpent, and bird may appear repeatedly across centuries and geographies, yet their interpretation is flexible, reflecting local theology, folklore, and philosophical frameworks. This adaptability ensures that animals remain potent tools for expression, capable of conveying nuanced messages tailored to specific contexts. They are universal symbols that transcend language, offering a quiet, enduring bridge between the artist's intent and the viewer's perception. Moreover, animals often encode lessons in morality and ethics. A carefully placed lamb may illustrate innocence at the center of chaos, while a serpent lurking at the margin warns of vigilance and awareness. Birds in formation suggest unity, divine order, or the aspiration toward higher truth. In each instance, the animal functions not merely as decoration, but as a guide to understanding moral principles, reinforcing the didactic purpose of religious art. Observers learn through subtle visual cues, engaging with the artwork in ways that extend beyond narrative storytelling. The subtle tension created by these symbolic animals enhances their impact. The observer experiences a quiet thrill upon noticing a hidden lamb, a serpent coiled in shadow, or a bird whose gaze seems almost intentional. These discoveries evoke curiosity, wonder, and sometimes unease, encouraging viewers to revisit the artwork repeatedly, uncovering new layers of meaning with each encounter. In this way, animals act as both entry points and catalysts for deeper contemplation, sustaining engagement across time and generations. Animals also function as connectors between the human and the divine. The lamb, thesopant, and the bird are familiar elements of the natural world, yet within the sacred context, they acquire transcendent significance. They are intermediaries, linking earthly life with spiritual principles, illustrating moral narratives, and emphasizing the interconnectedness of creation. By embedding these creatures in religious art, the artist creates a layered, holistic vision of reality where nature, spirituality, and human perception converge. In conclusion, symbolic animals are subtle yet powerful elements within religious art. Through careful placement, size, and posture, lambs, serpents, birds, and other creatures communicate spiritual truths, moral lessons, and sometimes even political commentary. Their presence encourages active engagement, rewarding patience, observation, and reflection. They serve as moral guides, spiritual symbols, and aesthetic embellishments, connecting the observer with hidden dimensions of meaning that endure across centuries. The gentle intrigue and subtle tension of these creatures transform every glance into a meditative experience, reminding us that even the smallest beings within a composition can carry profound significance. To notice these animals is to participate in a silent dialogue spanning time. Each creature is a witness to history, a messenger of hidden truths, and a reminder that meaning often lies where we least expect it. They invite contemplation, reflection, and discovery, rewarding the attentive observer with the quiet thrill of uncovering what has been hidden in plain sight. And as we trace the contours of these animals, watch their gazes, and interpret their positions, we enter into the enduring, mysterious conversation between artist, subject, and viewer, a conversation that continues to unfold with each careful look. Step into a dimly lit chapel or a quiet gallery where centuries-old paintings hang in stillness, and allow your gazetto follow the subtle interplay of illumination across the canvas. Light and shadow in these works are rarely accidental. They are carefully orchestrated by artists who understood the power of luminance to guide perception, evoke emotion, and encode meaning. Sunlight streaming through a window, a single candle flickering in the darkness, or the gentle gradient of shadow across drapery can reveal hidden forms, symbolic patterns, or secret messages visible only when observed with intention. In this delicate choreography of illumination, the artist communicates in whispers, leaving secrets for those who watch, wait, and perceive the shifting dance of light. Artists of the medieval and Renaissance periods were acutely aware that light could serve as both narrative and symbolic tool. It can create focal points, drawing the viewer's eye towards sacred or significant elements within the composition. Yet beyond this practical use, light and shadow often carry encoded meaning. A beam of sunlight might illuminate a subtle inscription, reveal a hidden figure, or cast a shadow that completes a geometric or symbolic shape. Candlelight in miniature paintings might highlight a tiny angel, a concealed script, or a barely perceptible pattern in the folds of fabric. These subtle manipulations of illumination create layers of meaning that escape the casual glance, rewarding the attentive observer with quiet revelation. Consider the works of Caravaggio, master of chiaroscuro. His dramatic contrasts of light and dark heighten emotional tension, but they also conceal and reveal. A hand emerging from shadow, a figure partially veiled, or a glint of reflected light can signify hidden intent, divine presence, or moral significance. The observer becomes a participant in the narrative, attuned to the way illumination shapes understanding. Light is not merely visual, it is a language, a medium through which secrets are whispered across centuries, inviting discovery and contemplation. The timing of light is also crucial. Many artists considered natural sunlight and its daily movement when designing compositions, particularly in cathedrals or churches, with windows oriented to catch specific angles at certain hours. Sunlight filtering through stained glass may illuminate a hidden figure, highlight a concealed inscription, or animate a symbolic pattern only at particular moments of the day. This temporal choreography transforms observation into an interactive experience. The viewer's perception aligns with cosmic or natural rhythms, creating a fleeting, almost magical revelation of meaning that may vanish as the sun moves, leaving behind only memory and awe. Shadows, too, carry secret messages. The folds of a robe, the contour of an architectural arch, or the overlapping limbs of figures can cast shadows that suggest forms, symbols, or gestures otherwise hidden. A shadow might delineate a cross, a hidden face, or a subtle pattern of lines, that complements the broader geometry of the work. Artists understood that these hidden forms enhance their narrative, subtly guiding the observer to notice what is overlooked and reflect on the deeper significance of the scene. In this way, shadow becomes a silent collaborator, an invisible hand shaping perception, emotion, and insight. Light and shadow also contribute to emotional resonance. The ethereal glow on a saint's face, the flicker of a candle illuminating an altar, or the soft chiaroscuro across a sacred landscape creates a contemplative mood, gently inviting reflection. But these effects are rarely superficial. Often, they encode theological, moral, or spiritual meaning. A beam of light might align with a symbolic triangle or circle, reinforcing geometric patterns that convey divine order. A shadow may emphasize the duality of good and evil, guiding viewers toward moral and spiritual contemplation. Through these subtle interventions, light and shadow become tools of meditation, teaching, and revelation. The interplay of illumination and perspective allows for multi-layered observation. A hidden face in the background, visible only in the gradient of shadow, or an inscription revealed by angled sunlight demonstrates the artist's mastery of perception. Observers who notice these details are drawn into an intimate dialogue with the artwork, discovering secrets intended for the patient and attentive. The shifting play of light encourages repeated viewing, each encounter offering new insight, emotion, or revelation. This temporal and perceptual dimension deepens engagement, transforming the act of looking into a meditative journey. In addition to their spiritual and narrative functions, light and shadow sometimes carry personal or political messages. Artists might hide a patron's initials, symbolic gestures, or discreet commentary within illuminated areas or shaded recesses. A candle flicker might reveal a hidden symbol of authority, loyalty, or dissent. A shadow might encode subtle moral guidance or philosophical reflection. These hidden cues reflect the nuanced environment in which artists worked, where overt expression was sometimes restricted, but subtle communication remained possible. The play of light thus becomes a covert language, a way to convey meaning to the discerning without exposing intention to the casual or hostile observer. Illumination in religious art often interacts with other hidden elements, creating layered complexity. A hidden eye may emerge from shadow. A symbolic animal may be revealed in candlelight, or a geometric pattern may only become apparent when light strikes a certain angle. These intersections amplify meaning, allowing multiple secrets to coexist within a single composition. The careful observer experiences not just visual beauty, but a rich interwoven narrative of spiritual, moral, and intellectual insight. Light and shadow transform the canvas into a living landscape, where perception, attention, and contemplation become acts of discovery and participation. The effect of hidden illumination is deeply psychological. Discovering a concealed figure or symbol in the interplay of light and shadow evokes awe, curiosity, and intimacy. It reminds the viewer that observation is active, that understanding requires engagement, and that meaning often exists just beyond immediate perception. This subtle tension between seen and unseen, revealed and concealed, creates an ethereal atmosphere, blending mystery, revelation, and quiet wonder. Each hidden form, each fleeting illumination, becomes a whisper from the past, a subtle nudge to look closer and think deeper. Artists also manipulated artificial light sources to enhance perception of hidden forms. Candles, torches, and lamps were painted with consideration for how their glow would interact with surrounding figures, fabric, or architecture. The reflection of light on polished surfaces, metal objects, or water might reveal inscriptions, guide attention toward significant details, or create ephemeral patterns that echo spiritual themes. These subtle effects transform the artwork into an interactive experience, where observation, reflection, and imagination combine to reveal layers of meaning previously concealed by shadow. The use of light and shadow as a vehicle for hidden messages demonstrates an understanding of perception that borders on the scientific. Artists considered angles, intensity, and contrast, calculating how illumination would fall to emphasize certain forms while leaving others obscured. They understood that our eyes perceive not just form, but depth, nuance, and suggestion. Through these considerations, paintings become more than static representations. They are dynamic spaces where light and shadow communicate silently, engaging viewers in a meditative exploration of visibility, perception, and revelation. Furthermore, the symbolic use of light and shadow often resonates with broader philosophical and theological ideas. Light represents divinity, truth, and guidance, while shadow suggests ambiguity, moral complexity, or hidden knowledge. The deliberate interplay of the two creates a visual metaphor for the human experience, the pursuit of understanding amidst uncertainty, the search for moral clarity in a world of ambiguity, and the experience of spiritual illumination amidst the shadow of doubt. Observers who notice these nuances participate in an ongoing reflection on perception, morality, and the unseen dimensions of life and faith. Ultimately, the hidden messages encoded in light and shadow invite contemplation, patience, and attentiveness. They remind us that the surface is rarely all there is, and that beauty, meaning, and spiritual insight often lie in subtlety, nuance, and the ephemeral play of illumination. By observing these whispers, viewers are drawn into a participatory experience, discovering secrets embedded in art that speak across centuries. Each shadowed fold, each glint of sunlight, and each softly illuminated form becomes a bridge between past and present, artist and observer, earthly perception and divine inspiration. In observing these concealed forms, one realizes that the act of looking is itself transformative. Light and shadow do more than guide the eye. They shape perception, emotion, and understanding. They create a dialogue between the viewer and the work, one that unfolds slowly, patiently, and mysteriously. Each hidden revelation fosters curiosity, reflection, and awe, turning passive observation into active meditation. Light and shadow whisper across time, inviting discovery, contemplation, and wonder. As we trace the interplay of illumination across centuries-old works, we recognize that light and shadow are more than aesthetic tools. They are carriers of hidden knowledge, moral reflection, and spiritual insight. They remind us that observation requires patience, engagement, and subtlety. They create moments of revelation, fleeting and profound, where hidden forms emerge from darkness, whispering their secrets and inviting us to look deeper. In this quiet interplay, the viewer becomes a participant in a timeless exploration of perception, morality, and the mysteries embedded in the sacred art of light and shadow. Walk slowly through the dim aisles of a centuries-old gallery, your gaze tracing the folds of painted robes, the contours of carved architecture, and the intricate patterns that adorn altarpieces. If you pay close attention, you may notice something unusual, a line of text almost imperceptible, woven into a decorative border etched along the hem of a robe or subtly aligned with a column or archway. These hidden letters, micro-writings or cryptic inscriptions are more than decorative flourishes. They are deliberate, secret messages embedded by the artist for those who possess the patience, knowledge, or curiosity to find them. The practice of hiding letters and messages in artworks spans centuries and regions. Medieval illuminators, Renaissance painters, and even Baroque masters sometimes encoded words into the very texture of their works. A single letter could reference a patron, a religious teaching, or a personal sentiment. Sometimes the message was devotional, sometimes political, and sometimes purely playful. The hidden letter serves as a bridge between the visible and the invisible, connecting the artist with a select audience capable of decoding the intention behind these cryptic gestures. In many ways, it transforms art into a quiet, interactive puzzle, a layered experience where discovery becomes part of the pleasure of observation. Micro-writing was often a tool of intimacy and discretion. Artists were commissioned by powerful patrons, members of the clergy or noble families, and the work frequently had to satisfy multiple purposes: aesthetic, spiritual, and sometimes political. In this environment, embedding secret inscriptions allowed artists to communicate subtle messages without disrupting the main narrative of the artwork. A letter hidden in the folds of a robe could honor a patron, record a personal prayer, or offer a discreet critique of social or ecclesiastical structures. In this way, hidden letters functioned as private dialogues between creator and observer, whispered across centuries with elegance and discretion. One of the most fascinating aspects of hidden letters is their integration into patterns and ornamentation. Decorative motifs, intricate embroidery, and architectural flourishes often conceal lines of text so fine that they are almost invisible to the casual viewer. Only when examined closely, perhaps with magnification or careful observation under shifting light, do these messages emerge. This careful concealment mirrors the concept of hidden knowledge, a recurring theme in religious and philosophical thought. The observer who discovers such inscriptions participates in a secret revelation, a moment of intimate connection with the mind and hand of the artist. Renaissance masters in particular were adept at embedding cryptic messages. Some paintings, letters appear subtly within the architecture, inscribed on capitals, architraves, or floor tiles. In others, text is hidden in natural elements, the pattern of a tree's leaves, the grain of wood, or the curling of water. Each letter, symbol, or phrase carries meaning, often known only to a select audience. Patrons who commissioned the work might understand a personal reference. Scholars or devotees could decode theological or moral messages. In this manner, the artwork functions as a multi-layered text, combining visual storytelling with literary subtlety. Hidden letters also create a sense of calm suspense. They suggest that beneath the visible narrative, there is another story quietly unfolding. The observer is invited to linger, to trace lines, curves, and patterns, searching for the concealed message. There is a subtle thrill in noticing an inscription tucked into a corner of a painting, or following a pattern that resolves into a word or phrase. Each discovery deepens engagement, transforming the passive act of looking into an active, contemplative experience. The hidden letter becomes a secret shared between artist and observer, a whisper across time that evokes curiosity, wonder, and quiet delight. The symbolic function of these hidden letters is multifaceted. Some inscriptions honor saints or divine figures, offering prayers, praises, or theological maxims. Others serve as reminders of mortality, moral conduct, or spiritual vigilance. In some cases, the letters are coded, requiring knowledge of numerology, linguistic symbolism, or contemporary ciphering practices to decode fully. This interplay between secrecy and revelation aligns with the broader tradition of hidden meanings in religious art, from concealed eyes to symbolic animals, geometric patterns, and subtle use of light and shadow. Each element contributes to a rich layered dialogue between the work, the artist, and the attentive viewer. Sometimes hidden letters contain dedications to patrons, embedded discreetly within the composition, to ensure recognition without overtly disrupting the narrative. A micro-inscription might encode the name of a noble family, a benefactor, or even a political leader, acknowledging influence, support, or patronage. These dedications are often entwined with symbolic motifs. A fleur-de-lis, a crown, or a stylized emblem might surround or highlight the letters, providing a visual cue for the attentive eye. In this way, the hidden letter simultaneously communicates gratitude, allegiance, and creative ingenuity. Artists also used hidden letters to convey personal reflections or philosophical observations. A brief prayer, a moral aphorism, or a subtle critique of the world could be encoded within the artwork, accessible only to those who looked carefully. The effect is both intimate and suspenseful. The artist leaves a trail for discovery, inviting contemplation and interpretation. The letters transform the artwork into a living, dynamic experience, where meaning is not entirely apparent at first glance, but reveals itself gradually, rewarding attention, patience, and curiosity. The discovery of a hidden letter often sparks fascination and wonder. Imagine leaning close to a centuries-old manuscript, tracing the lines of a painted border, and suddenly realizing that a series of letters forms a word, a message left for you across time. This moment of revelation is both aesthetic and emotional, bridging centuries of human thought, devotion, and creativity. It reminds us that art is not static, it is interactive, alive with intention and subtle communication. Each hidden letter is a small treasure, a secret note from the past that invites reflection, curiosity, and quiet awe. Some hidden letters also serve mnemonic or instructional purposes. In complex theological or narrative paintings, inscriptions can clarify points, direct attention to specific details, or guide moral contemplation. They may encode lessons about virtue, devotion, or moral conduct, turning the artwork into both a visual and intellectual exercise. The observer learns to read not just images, but subtle textual cues, cultivating patience, attentiveness, and reflective engagement. This interplay between text and image enhances both aesthetic appreciation and intellectual understanding, creating a multi-dimensional experience. Even in purely decorative contexts, hidden letters carry significance. Illuminated manuscripts frequently include intricate marginal inscriptions, tiny prayers, dates, or symbolic phrases that enhance the overall meaning of the text. These micro-writings may have been intended for personal devotion, to record ownership, or to commemorate a significant event. Though small, these inscriptions enrich the observer's understanding, revealing the care, thought, and devotion invested by the artist in every detail. The hidden letter becomes a testament to meticulous craftsmanship, layered meaning, and the subtle artistry of concealment. The process of encoding hidden letters reflects both ingenuity and subtlety. Artists carefully considered placement, legibility, and context. Letters needed to be concealed enough to avoid disrupting the primary narrative, but clear enough to be deciphered by those who looked attentively. This balance between concealment and clarity demonstrates the artist's mastery over perception, composition, and symbolic communication. The hidden letter is both a technical feat and a narrative device, merging artistry with intellect, beauty with discretion. Discovering these letters encourages deeper engagement with the artwork. Observers are drawn into a dialogue with the artist, tracing patterns, following lines, and interpreting meaning. The act of discovery fosters contemplation, reflection, and a sense of intimacy with the creator's intentions. Each letter found becomes a revelation, a private connection across time, a moment of calm suspense and wonder. The artwork, in turn, transforms from a static object into an interactive, participatory experience. Ultimately, hidden letters illustrate the layered sophistication of religious and historical art. They remind us that meaning is often concealed beneath surface appearances, awaiting the attentive, curious, and reflective observer. Each micro-inscription, each cryptic phrase is a testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and the desire to communicate beyond the immediately visible. They transform the act of observation into an act of discovery, contemplation, and engagement, bridging centuries of artistic, spiritual, and intellectual expression. The hidden letter also emphasizes the intimate relationship between artist, patron, and observer. By embedding these micro-messages, the artist created a network of quiet communication, accessible only to those willing to look closely. This subtle interplay fosters a sense of exclusivity and connection, turning observation into participation, perception into meditation. In this way, every hidden letter is a portal, a small, deliberate window into a world of meaning, intention, and reflection, waiting to be explored. In observing these cryptic inscriptions, we participate in a centuries-long conversation, bridging gaps of time, culture, and perception. Each letter, delicately concealed and patiently discovered, is a reminder that art holds secrets, that knowledge can be hidden in plain sight, and that the smallest details may carry profound significance. The calm suspense evoked by these hidden messages transforms viewing into a contemplative experience, where patience, attention, and curiosity are rewarded with revelation and wonder. Ultimately, the hidden letter is more than a decorative element. It is a whisper across time, a subtle narrative woven into the fabric of the artwork, and a call to observe, reflect, and discover. Each cryptic inscription encourages us to look beyond the obvious, to notice what is easily overlooked, and to engage with art not merely as a spectator, but as an active participant in its unfolding mysteries. Through these hidden letters, centuries old, works speak anew, inviting discovery, contemplation, and quiet wonder. Step closer to a painting, a fresco, or the ornate facade of a centuries-old cathedral, and allow your eyes to wander across its surfaces. Look beyond the primary figures, the overt narratives, and the central focal points. Amid trees, clouds, flowing drapery, or the geometric contours of arches and windows, you may discover something unexpected. A face. Not a saint or an angel, not a biblical figure immortalized in sacred narrative, but the likeness of a patron or contemporary, subtly woven into the very fabric of the artwork. These masked patrons were hidden in plain sight, a secret signature, a quiet nod to influence, vanity, or creative collaboration. Their presence transforms ordinary observation into a meditative experience, inviting reflection on the interplay between power, artistry, and perception. Artists have long been aware of the intimate relationship between creator and patron. Many works of art were commissioned by wealthy or influential individuals for both religious and secular purposes. Patrons provided resources, social prestige, and often artistic freedom, yet they also imposed subtle demands seeking recognition or representation within the work. Hiding a patron's face within a landscape, architectural element, or background figure allowed the artist to honor these individuals discreetly, balancing artistic integrity with social obligation. These hidden likenesses served multiple purposes: acknowledgement, flattery, and sometimes playful commentary, revealing the nuanced, delicate negotiation between artist and patron. The concealment of faces is a practice rich in both technical skill and psychological insight. To embed a visage within a tree trunk, a mountain ridge, or the intricate pattern of a floor required careful observation, precision, and imagination. The artist needed to ensure that the hidden figure did not disrupt the overall composition, yet remained recognizable to those in the know. Some faces were immediately perceptible upon close inspection, others only emerged through subtle play of light and shadow, the alignment of architectural lines, or the contouring of natural forms. Observing these hidden figures requires patience, attentiveness, and a willingness to embrace the slow, unfolding revelation that is central to the experience of hidden messages in art. The inclusion of masked patrons also introduces a subtle layer of narrative and intrigue. In landscapes, clouds may form the profile of a noble patron, blending seamlessly with the natural elements, yet suggesting watchfulness or influence. In architectural compositions, faces may emerge from the curvature of arches, the capitals of columns, or the detailing of ceilings and cornices, creating a sense of presence and authority that is both literal and symbolic. These hidden figures often reflect the patron's influence on the narrative, their role in supporting religious, civic, or artistic endeavors, and their desire to be remembered subtly within history. The emotional effect of discovering a masked patron is both contemplative and slightly eerie. There is a quiet thrill in noticing a hidden face, a recognition of human presence in spaces where one might not expect it. The face may appear calm, authoritative, or even mischievous, depending on the artist's intention. Its concealment encourages observers to question perception. Who is watching? What messages lie hidden within the seemingly innocuous elements of the composition? How does the interplay of influence, devotion, and artistry manifest in these subtle insertions? Each discovery generates a moment of intimate connection, bridging centuries of observation, intent, and reflection. In many cases, the hidden patron reflects the complex interplay of social, religious, and artistic forces. Wealthy or influential individuals often wielded considerable power over artists, dictating elements of composition, subject matter, or symbolic emphasis. Yet artists, in turn, exercised creative agency by embedding these figures subtly, balancing recognition with aesthetic integrity. A patron's face might appear in the shadows of a forest, in a distant landscape, or as part of an architectural motif, blending seamlessly with the scene while retaining symbolic weight. This careful balance illustrates both the ingenuity of the artist and the intricate social dynamics of patronage. Faces hidden in landscapes or architectural details are often imbued with symbolic significance beyond mere representation. A patron's likeness may serve as a witness to divine action, subtly suggesting their piety, influence, or role within a sacred narrative. Alternatively, the hidden figure might function as a moral or spiritual allegory, reminding viewers of human ambition, vanity, or responsibility. In this sense, the masked patron embodies duality, simultaneously a real individual and a symbolic presence within the artwork, bridging human reality with artistic and spiritual imagination. The technical execution of hidden faces reflects mastery over form, light, and perspective. Artists manipulate shadow, color, and structural contours to integrate the visage seamlessly within broader elements. A ridge in a mountain may double as a nose, a shadow may suggest an eye socket, or the pattern of leaves may hint at a cheek or chin. The resulting effect is both subtle and astonishing. The face exists, yet it merges with the surrounding forms, requiring careful attention to perceive. Observers often experience a quiet sense of discovery, a thrill tempered by reflection, as the hidden figure emerges gradually from the composition. In some instances, multiple hidden faces coexist within a single work, creating a network of observation and influence. Patrons, family members, or contemporaries may appear scattered across landscapes, blended into architectural elements, or camouflaged in decorative motifs. The multiplicity of hidden figures amplifies the sense of intrigue and engagement, encouraging viewers to examine the work repeatedly, uncovering new faces and layers of meaning with each viewing. The cumulative effect transforms the artwork into a dynamic, participatory experience where observation becomes an act of discovery and meditation. Hidden faces often carry subtle commentary or narrative cues. The expression, gaze, or orientation of a masked patron can convey approval, skepticism, or playful engagement with the surrounding scene. An observer who notices these details may sense the artist's voice, humorous, reverent, or contemplative, woven alongside the patron's presence. In this way, the masked patron not only serves as a historical record, but also participates in the emotional and narrative texture of the artwork, enriching interpretation and engagement. The placement of these hidden figures often reflects deliberate symbolism. Faces within clouds may suggest divine favor or observation, while those embedded in architectural elements may evoke stability, permanence, or authority. Landscape features too may carry allegorical weight. A hidden face in a winding path could symbolize guidance, vigilance, or the subtle influence of the patron on events and spiritual narratives. Through careful positioning, the artist transforms ordinary elements into meaningful conduits of narrative, social commentary, and spiritual reflection. The discovery of a masked patron also illuminates the broader context of artistic production. It reminds us that every work of art exists within a network of relationships, obligations, and creative negotiations. Patrons exerted influence, but artists responded with ingenuity, embedding subtle signatures, hidden messages, and concealed figures that honored, commented upon, or even gently critiqued their commissioners. These interactions, frozen in paint and stone, invite viewers to consider the human dynamics that shape the creation of the artwork, offering insight into historical, social, and psychological dimensions. Emotionally, hidden faces evoke curiosity, wonder, and reflection. Observers may feel a quiet sense of communion with the past, sensing the presence of individuals who shaped the creation of the work and whose likeness endures subtly within it. There is also a hint of eeriness, a face watching from within a cloud. A shadow or a distant arch reminds us of hidden observation and concealed intention, prompting reflection on visibility, influence, and perception. This combination of contemplation and unease heightens engagement, encouraging slow, attentive observation. Artists often employed subtle cues to guide the discovery of masked patrons. Light, perspective, and compositional lines may lead the eye toward the concealed face, while surrounding elements provide context or thematic reinforcement. A branch may curve to suggest a profile, a window frame may outline a hidden gaze. These visual hints reward patience and curiosity, transforming the act of viewing into a contemplative investigation where meaning is gradually revealed. The masked patron also emphasizes the interplay between visibility and invisibility, presence and absence, human and divine influence. By embedding faces discreetly, the artist acknowledges the patron's significance without overwhelming the spiritual or narrative focus of the work. The hidden figure exists in duality, real and symbolic, present yet concealed, temporal yet enduring. Observers participating in the discovery experience both delight and reflection, connecting with the artwork across centuries. Ultimately, the hidden faces of patrons within landscapes and architecture invite viewers to slow down, observe closely, and reflect deeply. They exemplify the subtle genius of artists who balanced aesthetic, spiritual, and social demands while embedding personal, historical, and symbolic meaning. Each concealed visage is a meditation on human presence, artistic creativity, and the passage of time, transforming ordinary observation into a layered, reflective experience. The masked patron reminds us that art often communicates in whispers. Not everything is immediately visible, and not all messages are overt. The patient, attentive observer discovers layers of meaning, insight, and history woven subtly into landscapes, architectural features, and decorative elements. Each hidden face is a testament to the intimate collaboration between artist and patron, a quiet acknowledgement of influence, a reflection of human vanity, and an invitation to contemplation. In The Quiet Revelation of a Concealed Face, we encounter the intersection of history, artistry, and psychology. We sense the presence of those who commissioned and influenced the work, observe the ingenuity of the artist in weaving these figures seamlessly into composition, and reflect on the subtle power of visibility and concealment. These masked patrons endure as silent witnesses, bridging the temporal divide between creator, observer, and the living world of art. Each discovery becomes a meditation on perception, influence, and the mysterious interplay of human intention embedded within beauty. Step closer to a centuries-old canvas or fresco and let your eyes wander carefully across the surface. At first glance, the painting may appear familiar. Saints, angels, holy figures, sacred narratives, rendered with meticulous care. Yet, for those who look more attentively, more patiently, subtle anomalies may emerge, shapes that hint at nudity, gestures that seem almost defiant, or hidden forms that challenge convention. These are the forbidden symbols, images or motifs quietly, embedded within religious art that flirt with taboo, question orthodoxy, or encode subtle rebellion. Their presence introduces a layer of tension and philosophical reflection, inviting viewers to reconsider not only what they see, but the intentions, pressures, and creativity behind the artwork. Artists across centuries operated within complex social, religious, and political frameworks. Censorship, moral expectation, and ecclesiastical oversight shaped what could be overtly displayed, yet artists often found ingenious ways to express thoughts, critique, or commentary while remaining within acceptable bounds. Forbidden symbols are evidence of this delicate negotiation. Encoded nudity, controversial iconography, or subtle visual puns that convey personal expression, skepticism, or rebellion. These symbols required careful placement, careful blending into existing compositions, and careful control over visibility, ensuring that only those who observed closely or understood the cultural context would perceive them. Consider nudity, often one of the most striking forms of forbidden imagery. While the naked form was celebrated in classical art for its beauty and perfection, religious art had to negotiate the tension between theological modesty and humanist aesthetics. In some cases, artists included partial nudity or hidden forms in drapery folds, shadows, or background figures. A muscular back barely visible in the corner of a painting, or a contour subtly suggested under robes, may represent the artist's homage to classical ideals, or an exploration of human vulnerability and perfection within the sacred context. The subtle inclusion of the nude human form invites quiet reflection on mortality, beauty, divinity, and the limitations of religious orthodoxy. Forbidden symbols are not limited to nudity. They often include gestures, objects, or patterns carrying controversial or ambiguous meaning. A hidden satirical face among angels, a mischievous hand gesture in a crowd of worshippers, or an incongruous animal subtly woven into a scene may encode critique, humor, or moral reflection. These visual cues are often subtle, requiring close attention and cultural literacy to decode. In doing so, they create a layered experience where art becomes both narrative and philosophical puzzle, engaging the observer in intellectual, emotional, and aesthetic discovery. Artists sometimes employed these symbols to quietly question authority or convention. A hidden figure displaying irreverent posture, a disguised pagan motif, or a small emblem contradicting overt religious themes may challenge viewers to consider the complexity of belief, morality, and power. Such subtle rebellion demonstrates the artist's agency within constraining structures, revealing a world of creativity where defiance is masked with discretion. Observers discovering these symbols experience a quiet thrill, the revelation of a hidden narrative, a whispered commentary from centuries past, or a private joke meant for those attuned to its presence. Color, light, and composition play a crucial role in encoding forbidden symbols. Shadows may conceal nudity or ambiguous gestures, while highlights or reflections may emphasize specific details, guiding observant viewers toward hidden elements. Drapery folds, architectural motifs, and background landscapes often serve as vehicles for these subtle insertions. The careful balance between concealment and visibility requires mastery of technique, perceptual psychology, and narrative cohesion. The forbidden symbol is never gratuitous. It is always intentional, crafted with subtlety to maintain the harmony of the overall work, while rewarding the attentive observer with quiet revelation. Forbidden symbols also serve as philosophical commentary. They raise questions about morality, perception, and the boundaries of human knowledge. A partially hidden nude may evoke reflection on the tension between earthly desire and spiritual devotion, while a concealed gesture may challenge societal or religious expectations. In this sense, these symbols encourage contemplation not merely of the artwork, but of broader existential, ethical, and spiritual themes. The observer becomes a participant in an unfolding dialogue between artist, audience, and culture, exploring ideas that transcend the immediate visual narrative. The inclusion of taboo imagery often reflects the artist's personal beliefs, experiences, or observations. It provides insight into the tension between individual creativity and institutional expectation. The forbidden symbol is a silent testament to the human desire for expression, the negotiation of boundaries, and the subtle assertion of identity within rigid structures. Discovering these elements fosters a sense of intimacy with the artist, a recognition of their subtle defiance, ingenuity, and courage, expressed not through words, but through the careful orchestration of paint, shadow, and form. In some cases, controversial references may extend to social, political, or moral critique. Hidden imagery may allude to corruption, hypocrisy, or moral failings, often camouflaged within saints' garments, architectural flourishes, or background details. Observers attuned to these subtleties may uncover messages that challenge conventional narratives, exposing layers of social commentary or moral reflection that otherwise remain invisible. These hidden motifs transform the act of viewing into a contemplative investigation, rewarding patience, cultural literacy, and sensitivity to nuance. Forbidden symbols also highlight the tension between sacred and profane. Nudity, suggestive gestures, or ambiguous forms exist in a liminal space between acceptability and taboo, holiness and human experience. Their subtle presence evokes reflection on the human condition, the coexistence of virtue and imperfection, the tension between moral aspiration and earthly desire, and the complex interplay between divine authority and personal expression. The hidden symbols become more than visual curiosities. They are philosophical provocations, encouraging introspection and meditation on fundamental questions of life, belief, and morality. The placement of forbidden symbols is deliberate and meaningful. Shadows may obscure controversial forms until the viewer's attention is guided toward them. Drapery folds, reflections, or background elements often serve as vehicles for subtle nudity, gestures, or motifs. The careful positioning ensures that these symbols complement the overall composition while maintaining discretion. observers discovering them experience quiet suspense and satisfaction, a sense of uncovering secrets embedded within the artistic and cultural context of the period. Forbidden symbols also extend to coded references, allegorical images, and iconographic ambiguity. A small animal may symbolize temptation, a partially obscured book may allude to forbidden knowledge, or a seemingly innocuous gesture may carry subversive connotation. Each element invites interpretation, reflection, and dialogue with the artwork, allowing multiple layers of meaning to coexist harmoniously. Observers who notice these details are rewarded with insight into the culture, philosophy, and creativity of the period, transforming passive viewing into active engagement. The effect of forbidden symbols is both psychological and emotional. Observers often experience a sense of discovery, a thrill tempered by reflection and contemplation. The revelation of hidden nudity, gestures, or ambiguous forms evokes curiosity, awe, and even a quiet sense of complicity with the artist. These symbols foster a meditative engagement with art, where patience, attention, and sensitivity to subtlety are essential. The experience is not sensational, it is introspective, inviting contemplation of human nature, morality, and the hidden depths of artistic expression. Artists used forbidden symbols to engage viewers across temporal and cultural contexts. Symbols, hidden within drapery, architecture, or background landscapes, transcend immediate perception, creating a dialogue that spans centuries. Observers who decode these motifs participate in a silent, ongoing conversation with the past, discovering thoughts, critiques, and reflections encoded within visual form. The act of uncovering forbidden symbols fosters connection across time, bridging human experience and artistic expression. In some, forbidden symbols, nudity, controversial references, and subtle rebellion represent a complex interplay of artistry, philosophy, and cultural negotiation. They are never accidental. Each hidden element is intentional, designed to reward attentive observation while remaining discreet. These motifs challenge viewers to engage deeply, reflect on the tension between the sacred and profane, and consider the broader implications of artistic expression within societal, religious, and personal frameworks. Ultimately, forbidden symbols invite quiet suspense and philosophical reflection. They encourage observers to slow down, to notice subtle details, and to contemplate not only what is visible but what lies beneath. Each hidden form, gesture, or motif is a whispered message from the artist, a meditation on morality, creativity, and human complexity. Through these subtle insertions, religious art becomes a space for discovery, reflection, and intellectual engagement, reminding us that beneath the surface lies a wealth of meaning waiting to be uncovered. By observing forbidden symbols, we participate in a centuries-long dialogue, uncovering hidden layers of meaning that speak to human ingenuity, courage, and reflection. We see that art is not simply visual, it is philosophical, subversive, and intimate. Each revelation is a reminder that careful attention, patience, and reflection transform the act of looking into an act of discovery, a quiet, contemplative journey through secrecy, morality, and human creativity. As you stand before a centuries-old painting or fresco, allow your eyes to wander across its intricate folds, subtle patterns, and softly illuminated backgrounds. At first glance, you may see only the familiar narrative: saints, worshippers, and sacred spaces meticulously rendered by the artist's hand. Yet for those who observe attentively, a quiet revelation may emerge, a pattern, a fold of fabric, or a seemingly ordinary motif that conceals a hidden figure. These are the angelic echoes, angels, spiritual beings, or divine presences, subtly embedded within the composition, often disguised within drapery, landscape, or decorative motifs. Their presence invites a meditative exploration of morality, spirituality, and the subtle ways the divine communicates with the human observer. Artists across the medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque periods often embedded these spiritual figures with great care. Angels and divine beings were not always rendered as overtly separate from the world. Instead, they often appeared intertwined with the material and mundane. their presence encoded within textures, patterns, and gentle nuances of form. A fold of a robe, the swirl of a cloud, or the shadow cast by a column could reveal a hidden wing, a faint halo, or a subtle face that conveys moral guidance or spiritual symbolism. These concealed presences reward patient observation, creating a layered experience where discovery deepens both emotional and spiritual engagement. The purpose of hiding angels or spiritual beings in disguise is multifaceted. First, it allows artists to convey moral and spiritual messages subtly, without overtly disturbing the primary narrative of the work. Second, it reflects a contemplative philosophy. The divine is often not immediately apparent, requiring attention, reflection, and discernment to recognize. Observers are invited into an intimate dialogue with the artwork, learning to perceive spiritual truths through observation, imagination, and meditation. This quiet, participatory experience transforms art into a space where attention and patience are rewarded with insight, wonder, and reflection. One of the most striking aspects of angelic echoes is their subtle integration with ordinary elements. A pattern of leaves in a background garden may reveal a small angel, carefully suggested by curves and negative space. The folds of a cloak may create the impression of a celestial figure, visible only upon closer inspection. Reflections in water, the gentle curl of smoke, or the arrangement of stars in a night sky may likewise hide spiritual presences. The skill required to conceal these figures without disrupting the overall composition is a testament to the artist's mastery of observation, form, and narrative subtlety. Angelic echoes often carry moral or spiritual symbolism. The hidden figures may represent guidance, protection, or divine oversight, reminding viewers of the omnipresence of the sacred, even in ordinary settings. They may suggest the presence of benevolence, encouraging virtuous behavior, or act as visual cues for meditation and reflection. In some works, multiple angelic forms are interwoven within a scene, creating a network of spiritual influence that enriches the narrative and emotional depth of the artwork. Observers who notice these subtle forms are drawn into a contemplative journey, experiencing a quiet sense of communion with the divine through visual discovery. The concealment of spiritual beings also reflects a philosophical understanding of perception and awareness. Just as moral and spiritual truths are not always immediately apparent in life, so too are angels hidden within art. The attentive observer becomes a metaphorical seeker, learning to recognize subtle signs, interpret nuanced forms, and engage with layers of meaning that exist beyond the immediately visible. In this way, the angelic echo serves both as a narrative device and a meditative tool, guiding viewers toward reflection, insight, and a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of the visible and the invisible. Color, light, and shadow play crucial roles in revealing these hidden figures. A subtle highlight on a fold of fabric may create the impression of a wing. A shadow cast across a wall may outline a celestial profile. Artists carefully manipulated these elements to ensure that the angelic presence was perceptible only to those who observed with patience and care. The interplay of illumination and form transforms observation into an interactive experience, where meaning emerges gradually and the act of seeing becomes a contemplative practice. Angelic echoes often intersect with other hidden messages in the artwork. A concealed angel may appear alongside symbolic animals, geometric patterns, or micro-inscriptions, creating a layered narrative that weaves together spiritual, moral, and intellectual themes. Observers who discern these intersections are rewarded with a richer understanding of the artist's intention, as well as the subtle ways in which spiritual messages were encoded within religious art. Each discovery reinforces the idea that meaning is often layered, nuanced, and embedded within the ordinary, waiting to be uncovered through attention and reflection. The emotional effect of discovering a hidden spiritual presence is profound. Observers often experience a sense of gentle wonder, a quiet recognition that there is more to the scene than initially meets the eye. The revelation of an angelic figure hidden in plain sight evokes awe, reverence, and an intimate connection with both the artist and the spiritual narrative. This discovery fosters a meditative engagement with The artwork, where attention, curiosity, and reflection combine to reveal the depth and subtlety of the composition. Artists also used angelic echoes to convey subtle narrative cues or moral instruction. A hidden angel may point toward a virtuous action, observe a scene of moral consequence, or guide the viewer's eye to a significant detail. These concealed forms function as visual signposts, encouraging contemplation and moral reflection. Observers are invited to consider not only what is visible, but also what lies beneath the surface, and to engage with the artwork as a dynamic interplay of narrative, symbolism, and spiritual guidance. The presence of hidden spiritual figures also speaks to the artist's creativity and ingenuity. To weave an angel or divine being seamlessly into a background or pattern requires an understanding of human perception, spatial relationships, and visual psychology. The artist must balance concealment with recognizability, ensuring that the figure integrates with the scene while remaining perceptible to the attentive observer. This skill transforms ordinary observation into a meditative act of discovery, highlighting the delicate relationship between form, function, and spiritual meaning. Angelic echoes are not confined to a single style or period. Across medieval manuscripts, Renaissance paintings, and Baroque frescoes, artists embedded hidden spiritual figures using a variety of techniques. In some cases, angels appear as faces, formed from cloud patterns. In others, they emerge from the folds of garments or the geometry of architectural elements. These figures may be subtle, requiring careful study to discern, or more obvious, revealed only through shifting light or perspective. Each instance demonstrates the universality of the desire to encode spiritual meaning and the ingenuity of artists in doing so. The discovery of a hidden angel often encourages repeated observation and reflection. What may be imperceptible at first glance becomes apparent with patience, attention, and a willingness to engage deeply with the artwork. Observers experience a sense of intimate discovery, as if participating in a centuries-long dialogue with the artist and the divine. This layered engagement fosters both intellectual curiosity and spiritual reflection, turning observation into meditation and contemplation. Hidden angels also serve to remind viewers of the omnipresence of the sacred within ordinary life. By embedding spiritual figures within the mundane elements of a composition, landscapes, drapery, or architectural details, artists convey the idea that divine presence exists everywhere, even when unnoticed. This subtle messaging encourages humility, attentiveness, and reflection, suggesting that awareness of the divine requires observation, patience, and sensitivity to subtle signs. In some works, the concealed figures carry personal or devotional significance. They may represent guardian angels, patrons, spiritual protectors, or allegorical figures tied to moral virtues. These hidden presences reinforce the intimate connection between observer, artist, and spiritual narrative, fostering contemplation and a sense of shared purpose across time. The angelic echo becomes both a visual delight and a spiritual guide, inviting viewers to explore the deeper layers of meaning encoded within the artwork. Ultimately, angelic echoes illustrate the layered complexity of religious and historical art. They reward careful observation, cultivate reflection, and remind us of the subtle ways in which artists conveyed spiritual truths. These hidden figures teach viewers to see beyond the obvious, to recognize the extraordinary within the ordinary, and to engage with art as a meditative, participatory experience. Each discovery evokes gentle wonder, quiet contemplation, and an intimate connection with the spiritual dimension of the work. The hidden angels encourage a reflective, contemplative approach to art. They invite observers to slow down, to examine details carefully, and to consider the interplay of form, light, and pattern. In doing so, they transform observation into a meditative practice, fostering appreciation not only for artistic skill, but also for the subtle ways in which spirituality can be expressed visually. Each angelic echo whispers a timeless message, that the sacred is always present, often disguised, and always awaiting attentive discovery. Through these concealed forms, viewers participate in a centuries-long conversation, discovering spiritual presences that remain hidden in plain sight. The angelic echo transforms art into a space of reflection, moral contemplation, and gentle wonder, reminding us that meaning, beauty, and spiritual guidance often lie in subtlety, patience, and attentive observation. Each hidden figure, quietly, watching and guiding, becomes a bridge between past and present, artist and observer, human curiosity and divine presence. As you gaze at a centuries-old painting, fresco, or religious panel, you may initially see a familiar tableau: saints kneeling in devotion, angels hovering above, serene landscapes, or sacred architecture rendered in meticulous detail. Yet for those who look closely, a subtle unease may ripple beneath the surface. A curl of shadow, a strangely twisted figure, a pattern that hints at something unsettling. These are the hidden demonic motifs, the devil's signatures discreetly embedded within the artwork. They serve as silent warnings, moral reminders, or coded representations of temptation and evil, woven into the composition with precision and intention. Unlike overt depictions of hell or sin, these concealed figures exist in quiet, almost imperceptible spaces, inviting the attentive viewer to consider the hidden forces of darkness alongside the more visible expressions of sanctity. Artists often operated within a duality of expression. They were tasked with conveying the divine, yet they also explored human vulnerability, fear, and moral complexity. The inclusion of hidden demonic or ominous motifs allowed them to address this tension subtly, creating a layered visual narrative. A shadow in the corner of a landscape may suggest a lurking figure. A twisted branch may form the outline of horns. The folds of a saint's robe may conceal a claw-like gesture. These elements are not random. Each has meaning, signaling danger, temptation, or the consequences of moral failing, while maintaining the integrity and serenity of the main scene. The subtlety amplifies the psychological impact, creating an eerie tension that is calm, deliberate, and deeply immersive. The hidden presence of demonic motifs also reflects philosophical and spiritual beliefs of the time. Artists understood that evil often operates subtly, influencing human behavior in ways that are not immediately visible. By encoding these figures within sacred art, they mirrored the notion that sin, temptation, and corruption can exist beneath a surface of apparent piety and order. The attentive observer, noticing a small hidden devil or an ominous shape in the background, experiences a quiet reminder of vigilance, morality, and the necessity of discernment. In this way, the artwork becomes both an aesthetic experience and a moral lesson, with hidden messages that resonate intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. The technical skill involved in concealing these motifs is remarkable. Artists manipulated shadow, light, and composition to integrate ominous figures seamlessly into their works. A demonic visage may emerge from a swirling cloud, a crack in the wall, or a geometric pattern, perceptible only when the eye lingers and attention deepens. The use of negative space, subtle distortion, and visual ambiguity enhances the sense of discovery, encouraging viewers to engage actively with the artwork. Each hidden figure becomes a moment of revelation, a whisper of tension that rewards patience and contemplation. Subtlety was often key because overt depiction of demonic forms could be considered inappropriate or scandalous, particularly in sacred spaces. By concealing these motifs within ordinary elements, trees, rocks, drapery, or architectural details, artists could express moral and spiritual truths without violating social, religious, or political constraints. The concealed devil is a masterstroke of discreet storytelling, present yet hidden, menacing yet calm, disruptive yet integrated. It transforms ordinary observation into a participatory, investigative experience, where attention to nuance and detail becomes essential. The emotional impact of discovering these hidden motifs is quietly unsettling. There is no need for overt horror. The power lies in subtlety. A shadow that takes the shape of a claw, a distant gaze that feels watchful, or a seemingly decorative flourish that hints at malice evokes a slow-building sense of anticipation. Viewers become aware of tension beneath calm surfaces, of forces acting quietly within the scene, and of the delicate balance between light and darkness that the artist intended to convey. It is an eerie, contemplative experience, one that lingers in the mind long after the initial observation. Hidden demonic motifs often intersect with other visual symbols, forming a network of subtle cues that guide interpretation. The artist may place a devilish face near symbolic animals, geometric patterns, or hidden letters, creating layers of meaning that enrich the narrative and enhance moral reflection. These motifs are rarely isolated. They interact with the overall composition, reinforcing themes of temptation, consequence, and human frailty. Observers who discern these connections gain a deeper understanding of the artwork, the artist's intent, and the subtle ways moral and spiritual messages were communicated in the past. The placement of these motifs is deliberate and meaningful. Shadows may lurk where human behavior is tested. Architectural lines may bend to suggest horns or claws, and clouds may curl to form vaguely sinister faces. Each choice conveys intent. The observer is encouraged to remain vigilant, to notice hidden influences, and to reflect on the consequences of sin, folly, or moral weakness. The subtlety ensures that the motifs remain integrated with the scene, while maintaining their psychological impact, creating a tension that is quietly powerful rather than sensational. Artists sometimes encoded these figures to convey cautionary tales or moral guidance. A hidden demon near a wealthy patron's representation could suggest the corrupting influence of greed. An ominous shadow hovering near a saint may remind viewers of the ever-present danger of pride or doubt. These visual lessons were designed to be noticed by the attentive eye, fostering contemplation, reflection, and ethical awareness. The art becomes interactive, encouraging viewers to think critically about morality, spirituality, and the hidden forces influencing human life. The psychological subtlety of hidden demonic motifs is profound. They exploit the viewer's natural inclination to seek patterns and meaning, guiding attention toward anomalies and ambiguities that evoke unease. Unlike dramatic depictions of hellfire, the concealed devil operates in quiet suspense, building tension incrementally as the observer discovers each subtle cue. This slow accumulation of perception mirrors human experience. The influence of evil is often gradual, concealed, and perceptually understated, yet its impact is undeniable. Cultural and historical context is crucial for interpreting these motifs. Artists often drew upon local folklore, theological teaching, and symbolic traditions to embed demonic figures that conveyed specific warnings. A twisted animal form may symbolize temptation. A shadowed figure may represent moral corruption. An abstract pattern may carry esoteric or allegorical meaning. Observers equipped with knowledge of iconography, cultural symbolism, and historical context gain richer insight into these subtle motifs, appreciating not only their visual ingenuity, but also the depth of their embedded messages. The inclusion of hidden demonic motifs also highlights the artist's creativity and psychological awareness. To render fear, tension, or moral warning without disrupting the overall serenity of the artwork requires mastery of form, perception, and narrative subtlety. Artists needed to balance visibility with discretion, ensuring the motif was perceptible to the attentive observer, but did not overshadow the primary narrative. The result is a harmonious blend of artistic skill, ethical reflection, and psychological insight, where the hidden devil becomes a quiet yet potent presence within the composition. The discovery of these motifs often elicits a complex emotional response, a mixture of fascination, unease, and contemplation. Observers experience the thrill of uncovering something concealed, the reflective pause that follows recognition, and the slow-building sense of tension that the hidden figure evokes. This emotional interplay is central to the experience of hidden, demonic motifs, transforming observation into meditation and introspection. The artwork is no longer a static object. It becomes a dynamic landscape of moral and psychological exploration. Hidden motifs are sometimes designed to interact with light, perspective, or temporal factors. Shadows may reveal ominous forms only at particular angles, creating a subtle, almost magical effect as the observer shifts their position. A seemingly decorative flourish may resolve into a demonic visage when viewed in a specific way, rewarding Careful observation and curiosity. This dynamic interplay between perception and revelation enhances the immersive quality of the artwork, ensuring that discovery is both engaging and contemplative. Ultimately, the Devil's Signature illustrates the layered sophistication of historical religious art. It demonstrates the ability of artists to communicate complex moral and spiritual truths subtly, engaging viewers across intellectual, emotional, and perceptual dimensions. Hidden demonic motifs transform the act of observation into a reflective experience, cultivating attention, patience, and awareness of subtle forces at play within human life and the spiritual narrative. Through these concealed figures, art becomes a space of quiet suspense, moral reflection, and psychological exploration. Each hidden motif reminds us that darkness often exists alongside light, that temptation operates subtly, and that careful observation is rewarded with insight. The Devil's Signature encourages viewers to consider the unseen forces influencing human action, to reflect on moral choices, and to appreciate the skill with which artists encoded these lessons within serene, sacred compositions. The hidden demonic figure, though subtle, leaves a lasting impression. It creates a dialogue between past and present, artist and observer, light and shadow, virtue and temptation. Each discovery is a quiet revelation, a moment of suspense and reflection that enriches understanding and deepens the contemplative experience. By observing the Devil's Signature, we participate in a centuries-long conversation, uncovering hidden layers of meaning, artistry, and moral insight that continue to resonate through time. Step back and allow yourself to drift into the quiet rhythm of a centuries-old painting. Observe not only the figures and objects depicted, but the very hues that compose them. The deep reds of robes, the gentle blues of skies, the subtle greens of foliage. At first glance, these colors may seem purely aesthetic, chosen for harmony, contrast, or the naturalism of the scene. Yet, for the careful observer, the palette itself becomes a silent language, a coded system of meaning that conveys spiritual, emotional, and philosophical truths. This is the world where color speaks, where artists embed messages through the careful selection and juxtaposition of pigments, creating a visual poetry that whispers to those who truly see. Throughout history, color has carried symbolic weight, particularly within religious and sacred art. Red, the color of blood, fire, and passion, frequently evokes martyrdom, sacrifice, or divine love. Blue, often used for the robes of the Virgin Mary, conveys divinity, serenity, and heavenly authority. Green may symbolize renewal, fertility, or the eternal cycle of life, while gold illuminates sanctity, spiritual wealth, or divine light. Each pigment is chosen not merely for aesthetic pleasure, but for the subtle layering of meaning, shaping the emotional and contemplative experience of the viewer. Understanding the symbolic language of color allows us to see the painting as a multidimensional story, where hue becomes a carrier of hidden messages. Artists deliberately structured their compositions to leverage these associations, often embedding dual meanings in the same color. A red cloak may mark a figure as a martyr, yet its placement against a cool blue background could also suggest divine protection or cosmic significance. Shadows painted in muted tones may obscure or highlight certain elements, guiding the eye and hinting at hidden narrative threads. The interplay between colors creates tension, contrast, and harmony, forming a visual dialogue that speaks directly to the observer's intuition and imagination. To the untrained eye, this dialogue may remain unseen, but to the attentive viewer, it unfolds slowly, like a whispered story carried by the brushstrokes. Consider the subtle power of complementary colors. A deep crimson robe set against a field of vibrant green may not only please the aesthetic sense, but also evoke deeper symbolic resonance. Life and death, sacrifice and renewal, passion and contemplation. Similarly, the juxtaposition of muted grays with luminous golds can suggest the coexistence of human frailty and divine transcendence. Artists knew that color could affect mood, perception, and even spiritual reflection, using it as a vehicle for meaning that extended beyond literal representation. Each decision was intentional, carefully calibrated to communicate layers of symbolism that could guide the observer's understanding in both subtle and profound ways. The use of color also reflects philosophical and theological ideas. Medieval and Renaissance artists believed that the material world could mirror spiritual truths, and that the careful use of pigment could reveal hidden aspects of reality. Blue skies might represent the infinite and the divine, while warm reds evoke human emotion and suffering. Green landscapes suggest life, growth, and hope. By decoding the symbolic language of color, viewers gain insight not only into the artwork itself, but also into the worldview and spiritual understanding of the artist, the patron, and the culture that produced the work. The subtle layering of colors often concealed additional messages. In some works, darker pigments were used to obscure figures, animals, or symbolic objects until the observer's eye adjusted, gradually revealing hidden elements. Light and shadow, hue intensity, and color gradation all serve as vehicles for narrative and symbolic depth. A crimson highlight may draw attention to a hidden gesture. A delicate wash of blue may suggest divine presence surrounding a mortal figure. In this way, color operates as both a guide and a code, a gentle whisper of meaning that requires patience, attention, and reflection to fully perceive. Beyond the symbolic associations of individual colors, combinations and sequences also carry meaning. A progression from green to red may signify transformation, sacrifice, or the transition from life to death. Alternating warm and cool tones can evoke moral, emotional, or spiritual tension within the scene. Observers attuned to these subtleties can trace an invisible narrative flowing through the color palette, a story encoded in hue and shading that complements the overt depiction of figures and events. In this sense, color itself becomes a language nuanced and complex, capable of conveying moral, spiritual, and emotional messages without a single word. Dreamlike effects often emerge from these color choices. Layers of semi-transparent glazes, delicate gradients, and subtle tonal shifts create a sense of atmosphere and depth, encouraging the viewer to linger and reflect. A sky rendered in a soft, otherworldly blue may seem to shimmer, hinting at the divine beyond the visible world. Shadows may contain subtle hints of hidden forms, angels, animals, or symbolic objects, revealed only to the patient eye. The combination of color, composition, and subtle visual cues produces an immersive experience, blending aesthetics with philosophical and spiritual reflection. Artists also use color to encode moral lessons. Red may warn of sin or danger, while green offers hope or renewal. Gold may signify virtue or divine favor, encouraging viewers to interpret the scene in a moral and contemplative framework. This way, color becomes a silent teacher, a medium for instruction and reflection that operates beneath the surface, rewarding careful observation and thoughtful engagement. Observers who notice these subtleties experience a layered, immersive interaction with the artwork, one that intertwines visual pleasure with moral and philosophical insight. Cultural context further enriches the symbolic language of color. In different periods and regions, pigments carried specific associations shaped by religion, literature, and tradition. Ultramarine, derived from costly lapis lazuli, was often reserved for divine figures, emphasizing sanctity, rarity, and value. Vermilion, associated with sacrifice and martyrdom, could guide viewers to recognize hidden moral significance. Understanding these contextual associations deepens the experience, revealing how artists encoded meaning not only visually but culturally, creating a dialogue between observer, artwork, and historical moment. Color also serves as a vehicle for emotional resonance. Warm tones evoke intimacy, passion, or intensity, while cool tones suggest serenity, contemplation, or detachment. By manipulating these effects, artists guide the viewer's emotional response, subtly shaping perception and interpretation. Observers may feel a gentle tension as complementary or contrasting colors interact, or a sense of calm as harmonious tones pervade the scene. These emotional cues embedded in the palette enrich the interpretive experience and encourage reflection on the interplay between color, meaning, and human perception. Subtle, hidden uses of color often require close observation. A faintly painted red edge along a figure's garment may signify martyrdom or danger. A soft blue glow may imply spiritual favor or divine guidance. Layering and glazing techniques allow pigments to interact in complex ways, producing luminous effects and gradations that enhance both visual beauty and symbolic depth. The attentive observer is rewarded with the gradual unveiling of meaning, transforming the act of seeing into a meditative, contemplative experience. In addition to symbolic content, color functions as a structural tool. Artists use tonal contrasts to emphasize focal points, guide the viewer's eye, and create compositional hierarchy. Within this structural framework, symbolic associations deepen, creating an intricate web of meaning that spans aesthetics, morality, and spirituality. Observers discover that color is not incidental but integral, shaping perception, guiding interpretation, and encoding subtle narratives throughout the work. Ultimately, the study of color in historical religious art demonstrates the meticulous care and philosophical depth with which artists approached their work. Each hue, gradient, and combination carries intentional meaning, inviting viewers to slow down, observe attentively, and reflect deeply. By decoding the symbolic language of color, we gain insight into the worldview, morality, and spiritual imagination of past cultures, as well as the subtle artistry of those who painted not just what was seen but what was felt, believed, and contemplated. Color speaks not only to the intellect but to the soul. It conveys moral, spiritual, and emotional messages that complement narrative and figurative elements. It encourages reflection on life, virtue, and the human condition, reminding viewers that meaning often exists beneath the surface, waiting to be perceived by the patient, attentive eye. Through color, artists whisper secrets across time, inviting each observer to participate in a dialogue that transcends centuries, culture, and language. In quiet contemplation, the observer begins to recognize the hidden messages embedded within the palette. Each red, blue, green, and gold conveys not just aesthetic beauty, but a layered meditative story waiting to be interpreted, experienced, and understood. Color becomes both language and guide, a gentle bridge connecting observer, artwork, and the philosophical and spiritual worlds that shaped its creation. Step closer to the canvas, fresco, or illuminated manuscript, and allow your gaze to drift beyond the immediate figures, colors, and symbols. Look instead at the underlying structure, the invisible architecture of the work, where repetition, sequence, and proportion quietly reveal themselves. This is the realm of numerology in art, a subtle, almost imperceptible system of hidden messages encoded through numbers, arrangements, and mathematical harmony. Artists across centuries, particularly in religious and mystical contexts, employed numbers as a secret language, embedding spiritual, philosophical, and cosmic significance within the very framework of their compositions. Numbers have long been perceived as carriers of divine truth. In many religious traditions, specific numbers convey sacred meaning. 3 evokes the Trinity, 7 symbolizes perfection or completion, 12 represents divine order or apostleship, and 40 often signifies trial, transformation, or purification. Artists aware of these associations structured their compositions around such numeric patterns, embedding spiritual insight, moral guidance, and mystical reflection in forms that may be invisible to the casual observer. The careful placement of figures, objects, or architectural elements according to number sequences transforms the artwork into a layered experience, where hidden meaning is revealed through contemplation and attentiveness. Consider the arrangement of figures within a painting. The number of angels, saints, or other characters is rarely arbitrary. Groups of 3 may signify divine presence, while 7 figures may mark spiritual completeness. Even the repetition of objects, candles, stars, or architectural features can encode numeric significance reflecting cosmic order or moral principle. Observers who notice these patterns are drawn into a contemplative dialogue with the artist, recognizing that the visible composition is only part of the message and that numbers provide a deeper, often mystical framework for understanding. Beyond simple counting, numbers can structure spatial relationships and geometric composition. Triangles, circles, and other shapes may correspond to sacred numerology, creating a visual harmony that is simultaneously aesthetic and symbolic. The use of proportional ratios, such as the golden ratio or other mathematically significant relationships, imbues the work with a sense of balance, beauty, and cosmic resonance. These hidden structures reflect the belief that the universe itself is ordered according to numerical principles, and that art, when harmonized with these principles, becomes a reflection of divine truth. Numerology also operates on multiple layers within a single work. A sequence of 3 steps in architecture may mirror a triad of figures. 7 windows may correspond to spiritual virtues. 12 leaves in a tree may hint at apostles or months. Each layer reinforces the others, creating a dense, interconnected network of meaning that rewards careful observation. The attentive viewer discovers that every placement, repetition, or sequence is intentional, a whisper of logic, philosophy, and spiritual insight encoded within the visual narrative. Hidden numerical patterns often intersect with symbolic elements, forming a sophisticated system of coded meaning. Colors, gestures, animals, or hidden letters may be multiplied or arranged according to number sequences, amplifying spiritual, ethical, or mystical resonance. A red robe appearing 7 times may emphasize martyrdom. A cluster of 3 birds may signify divine protection. A hidden angel positioned to complete a triangular composition may reinforce moral or cosmic order. Observers attuned to numerological coding can perceive an underlying rhythm that transforms viewing from passive observation to active contemplation, where patterns reveal deeper truths about creation, divinity, and human responsibility. The mystical aspect of numerology lies not only in symbolic meaning, but also in the notion that numbers are a universal language. Across cultures and centuries, numeric patterns have been associated with harmony, cosmic order, and divine communication. Artists embedded these principles within their works, creating a dialogue between material form and spiritual truth. To recognize and interpret these patterns is to participate in this dialogue, to perceive the invisible scaffolding that structures the artwork and imbues it with meaning beyond mere representation. Sequences, repetitions, and ratios often serve as silent guides for the observer's contemplation. A series of arches, steps, or windows may suggest spiritual ascent or moral progression. Recurring shapes may symbolize virtue, divine intervention, or cosmic cycles. By counting, comparing, and reflecting, viewers gain insight into both the artist's intent and the philosophical context that informed the work. This contemplative engagement transforms viewing into an almost meditative act, where numbers guide perception, encourage reflection, and reveal hidden layers of spiritual and moral significance. Numerology also conveys temporal and cyclical understanding. 40 days, 12 apostles, 7 virtues. Such sequences are not merely arbitrary. They reflect sacred cosmology, biblical numerology, and philosophical systems that link human life to divine order. Artists embed these temporal markers subtly, using arrangement, repetition, or proportional spacing. Observers who recognize these numerical motifs encounter not just static imagery, but a visual narrative aligned with sacred rhythms of time, morality, and cosmic structure. The deliberate integration of numbers requires precise skill and careful planning. Artists often mapped compositions before applying paint, ensuring that figures, objects, and architectural elements adhered to numeric principles. This planning underscores the intellectual and spiritual labor involved in creating sacred art, highlighting that every element, visible or hidden, was intentional and meaningful. Hidden numerological structures demonstrate a fusion of artistry, philosophy, and devotion, transforming the artwork into a multidimensional experience where form, meaning, and spirituality converge. The contemplative power of numerology lies in its subtlety. Unlike overt symbols, numbers are often invisible at first glance, revealed only through attentive observation and thoughtful reflection. This hidden quality encourages patience, focus, and a meditative approach to viewing. Observers slowly become aware of numeric patterns, sequences, and repetitions, experiencing the satisfaction of uncovering deliberate structure within apparent randomness. Each discovery is a quiet revelation, a bridge connecting observer, artist, and spiritual worldview across centuries. Numerical motifs are often intertwined with symbolic or allegorical content. A group of 3 figures may represent the Trinity, while their placement along a triangular composition reinforces balance and divine order. 7 candles may signify completeness, while their light illuminates key figures, linking spiritual numerology to visual emphasis. 12 leaves or stars may symbolize apostles, months, or cycles, integrating sacred narrative with the artwork's compositional rhythm. Each numeric reference amplifies meaning, creating a multi-layered dialogue that engages intellect, intuition, and spirituality simultaneously. Beyond visual representation, numerology connects art to broader mystical traditions. Kabbalistic, Pythagorean, and other esoteric systems attribute hidden significance to numbers, suggesting that numerical patterns reflect the fundamental structure of reality. Artists occasionally incorporated these mystical principles, embedding symbolic numbers within visual sequences to convey philosophical and spiritual truths, accessible only to the initiated or the attentive observer. In this way, the artwork becomes a bridge between material form and metaphysical insight, a medium through which hidden wisdom can be perceived and contemplated. The emotional and spiritual effect of discovering numerological patterns is quietly profound. Observers experience a sense of connection across time, linking themselves to the artist's intent and the philosophical worldview that shaped the work. Recognition of numeric sequences and hidden arrangements fosters wonder, reflection, and a sense of participation in a deeper, invisible order. Each pattern discovered is a moment of insight, revealing the layers of meaning encoded within the artwork and emphasizing the intimate interplay between human creativity, sacred symbolism, and cosmic order. Ultimately, numerology in art demonstrates the meticulous, contemplative, and mystical intentions of the artist. Numbers never lie. They form the hidden scaffolding of sacred composition, guiding perception, imparting spiritual lessons, and revealing philosophical depth. Through sequences, repetition, ratios, and arrangements, artists encoded meaning that transcends time, inviting observers to perceive not only the visible story, but the invisible logic, spirituality, and cosmic harmony beneath the surface. By engaging with hidden numerology, viewers experience art as a meditative, contemplative practice. Observation becomes reflection, counting becomes discovery, and perception becomes a bridge between material and spiritual understanding. Every numeric motif, carefully placed and quietly significant, transforms a painting from a visual object into a multidimensional experience, where form, meaning, and mystical insight converge in subtle harmony. Numbers, in their quiet consistency, provide a structure for both creation and contemplation. They guide the eye, shape the composition, and encode spiritual truth, transforming observation into a reflective journey across space, time, and symbolism. Observers who notice these hidden patterns engage with the artwork not only visually but intellectually, morally, and spiritually, discovering that the language of numbers speaks across centuries, cultures, and consciousness itself. In the end, the numerological framework embedded in sacred art reminds us that meaning often resides in the unseen, that patience and attentiveness reveal hidden order, and that careful observation can transform perception into meditation. Numbers never lie. They echo the universe's hidden harmony, connect observer and artist, and illuminate the mysteries of human, divine, and cosmic experience woven into every masterful composition. When one first gazes upon a centuries-old painting or fresco, the immediate narrative draws the eye. Saints kneeling in devotion, divine figures illuminated with reverence, scenes of sacrifice, blessing, or devotion meticulously depicted in every brushstroke. Yet for those willing to linger, a secondary narrative often unfolds within the background, margins, and subtle details. These hidden stories exist quietly alongside the primary religious tale, whispering commentary, irony, or moral nuance that may be invisible to the casual observer. This is the story within the story, a secret layer of meaning embedded by the artist, offering insight, reflection, and occasionally gentle subversion. Artists across the medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque periods often integrated these secondary narratives with great care. While the main composition fulfilled spiritual, devotional, or instructive purposes, the hidden details allowed a more playful, contemplative, or even subtly critical dialogue to emerge. Figures in the background may perform mundane or unexpected. Animals may act in ways that mirror human folly, and architectural or environmental elements may contain clues or metaphors that expand upon or complicate the overt story. This layered approach invites the observer into a quiet investigation, where attention, patience, and curiosity reward discovery. Consider a scene of the Annunciation. The angel Gabriel and the Virgin Mary dominate the foreground, bathed in light and reverence. Yet in the background, a small domestic scene may unfold: a servant spilling water, a cat creeping along the floor, or a bird perched in an unusual posture. These minor details are not accidental. They may serve as allegorical echoes, moral commentaries, or subtle humanizing touches, reminding viewers that divine events occur within a complex, often messy, human world. The artist thus provides a dual narrative: the sacred story in the foreground and a secondary interpretive story in the periphery. Hidden narratives often reflect social, political, or moral commentary. Artists might include depictions of contemporary figures disguised within biblical or saintly scenes, creating a visual dialogue between the sacred and the present. A merchant, courtier, or local official may appear in the folds of drapery, as a sculpted face in architecture, or as a background figure carrying out ordinary tasks. Observers who recognize these insertions uncover a subtle critique, homage, or acknowledgement embedded within the artwork. These secondary narratives transform the viewing experience from passive observation into active discovery, creating a bridge between the artist's time and ours, and between public and private commentary. Animals frequently play a role in these hidden narratives. In addition to symbolic meaning, they may participate in miniature stories unfolding quietly behind the main figures. A fox sneaking through a garden may suggest cunning or deceit. A dog lying at someone's feet may imply loyalty or domesticity. Birds in a distant tree may represent freedom, vigilance, or fleeting time. These details often create miniature dramas within the larger narrative, offering both visual delight and interpretive complexity. Observers learn to read the scene on multiple levels, recognizing how subtle elements interact to enrich moral, philosophical, and emotional resonance. Secondary narratives also explore the passage of time, human behavior, and the consequences of actions. While the primary scene communicates theological or moral instruction, hidden backgrounds may depict mundane, humorous, or ironic moments. Servants at work, children playing, or minor acts of negligence or mischief appear unnoticed by the central figures. In doing so, artists reflect the larger human experience, embedding the sacred narrative within the tapestry of ordinary life. This layering creates tension, contrast, and depth, heightening the cinematic quality of the work and rewarding prolonged attention with quiet revelation. The interplay between foreground and background often carries symbolic weight. Secondary narratives may mirror, contrast, or foreshadow the main story. A hidden figure gazing anxiously toward the primary scene may anticipate future events. A seemingly insignificant action may metaphorically reflect spiritual struggle, temptation, or human frailty. These subtle cues invite contemplative engagement as the observer deciphers meaning from careful observation and interpretive reasoning. Art becomes an interactive experience where insight is earned through mindfulness and curiosity. Architectural and environmental elements frequently contribute to these hidden stories. Carved columns, decorative borders, and intricate landscapes often conceal figures, animals, or objects whose meaning unfolds gradually. A crumbling wall may hint at the transience of human life. A distant tower may symbolize vigilance, ambition, or divine oversight. Patterns in drapery, mosaics, or flooring may hide miniature depictions of secondary scenes, visible only to those who look carefully. Through these techniques, the artist integrates the hidden narrative seamlessly, creating a layered cinematic tableau where every detail can hold significance. Artists also used hidden narratives to encode moral lessons subtly. While the central scene might celebrate divine virtue or heroic sacrifice, minor figures or actions in the background may illustrate folly, vice, or cautionary behavior. A servant sneaking food, a figure collapsing in exhaustion, or a playful child may serve as allegorical examples, reminding viewers of the ongoing human struggle between virtue and temptation. These layers create a richer, more immersive viewing experience, encouraging both intellectual and emotional reflection. The discovery of hidden narratives elicits a profound sense of curiosity and wonder. Observers experience the thrill of noticing details that may have been overlooked for centuries, a quiet dialogue across time with the artist and the historical context in which the work was created. Each revealed story, no matter how minor, enhances understanding, providing both amusement and contemplative depth. The art transforms from static representation to dynamic interaction, where meaning is accumulated gradually through observation and reflection. Narrative layering often mirrors literary techniques such as foreshadowing, juxtaposition, and irony. A hidden figure may anticipate future events in the main story. A background scene may parody or critique the primary narrative. A subtle interaction between minor figures may evoke human foibles that complement or complicate spiritual messages. The cinematic quality of these compositions is enhanced by careful orchestration of attention, guiding the observer through foreground, middle ground, and background in a flow of visual storytelling that parallels the unfolding of a narrative in literature or film. Temporal elements are frequently embedded within secondary narratives. Artists may depict past, present, and future moments simultaneously, using background actions to hint at consequences, prior events, or alternative interpretations. A discreetly painted figure in motion may foreshadow judgment, salvation, or failure. A sequence of small actions may illustrate moral cause and effect. In this way, the painting functions not merely as a frozen moment, but as a continuum with hidden stories adding dimension, suspense, and reflection for those who engage attentively. The inclusion of secondary narratives also reflects the artist's creative freedom and intellectual engagement. Within the constraints of religious or commissioned works, these subtle stories allowed for expression, commentary, and experimentation. The hidden details rewarded close observation, encouraged reflection, and communicated nuanced insights about human behavior, society, and spirituality. Observers who notice these narratives enter a participatory experience, bridging the gap between creation and perception, past and present, artist and audience. Hidden stories often interact with other coded messages in the composition. Numerology, color symbolism, angelic echoes, or demonic motifs may intersect with secondary narratives, creating a dense network of layered meaning. A figure in the background may hold symbolic objects, adopt gestures that align with moral codes, or interact with hidden animals or numerological patterns. Observers attuned to these interconnections experience the artwork as a complex, multifaceted narrative where understanding emerges gradually through contemplation and attentiveness. Emotionally, these hidden narratives provide depth and resonance. Viewers may experience amusement, surprise, empathy, or reflection upon discovering background stories. The juxtaposition of ordinary or mischievous activity against sacred foregrounds creates a tension between the mundane and the divine, human and spiritual, serious and playful. This cinematic layering enhances engagement, producing a rich, meditative experience that encourages lingering, revisiting, and thoughtful consideration of both visual and moral content. Ultimately, the story within the story illustrates the ingenuity, subtlety, and contemplative depth of historical religious art. It transforms the act of viewing from passive reception into active discovery, where meaning is layered, nuanced, and richly interwoven. Every small detail, background action, or hidden figure contributes to a quiet dialogue, where the observer learns to see beyond the immediately visible, uncovering ethical, philosophical, and spiritual reflections embedded within the composition. Secondary narratives remind viewers that art is not static. Even as centuries pass, attentive eyes reveal hidden layers of storytelling, moral insight, and philosophical depth. These stories reward patience, curiosity, and reflection, transforming observation into meditation and allowing the artwork to continue communicating across time. Each revealed detail evokes subtle surprise, contemplation, and engagement, creating a cinematic experience where the visible and invisible merge, guiding the viewer through multiple dimensions of meaning. Through these concealed narratives, artists invite participation, reflection, and exploration. Observers become detectives of history, morality, and creativity, discovering that the painting is more than a single narrative. It is a multi-layered experience, a dialogue between past and present, sacred and human, visible and hidden. Each small story, carefully hidden and patiently discovered, enriches understanding, engages the imagination, and heightens appreciation for the profound artistry, subtlety, and contemplation embedded within every composition. When gazing at historical religious art, the most immediate details often capture our attention. The expressions of figures, the interplay of light and shadow, the vibrant colors, or the sweeping gestures that convey narrative and emotion. Yet, upon closer observation, one begins to notice smaller elements scattered throughout the composition, objects that might initially appear incidental or decorative, but are, in fact, carefully chosen vessels of meaning. Keys resting on a table, a book held tightly in a figure's hands, a cup placed at the edge of a scene, or a musical instrument lying quietly in the background, all these items carry symbolic or encoded messages, creating a hidden layer of communication that extends beyond the apparent narrative. This is the world of the symbolic object, where even the smallest detail can whisper secrets across centuries. Artists from the medieval through the Baroque period were acutely aware of the power of objects to convey complex spiritual, moral, and philosophical truths. Unlike figures which could express emotion or narrative more overtly, objects offered a quiet, almost imperceptible language. A simple key might symbolize access to divine knowledge, spiritual authority, or moral responsibility. A closed book could suggest hidden wisdom, sacred texts, or personal devotion. A cup might reference the Eucharist, sacrifice, or divine favor, while instruments could signify harmony, divine music, or the ephemeral nature of life. These objects, while visually subtle, act as conduits of meaning, requiring careful observation and reflection to decode their significance. The placement of symbolic objects is often deliberate and structured. Artists considered perspective, proximity to figures, and interaction with surrounding elements when embedding meaning. A key lying near a saint may indicate spiritual authority or access to sacred truths. A book positioned beside a scholar or monk could reflect the pursuit of knowledge or the presence of hidden wisdom. Even objects placed in the far background, partially obscured by drapery or architecture, can carry meaning, suggesting secrecy, subtle instruction, or moral reflection. In this way, the physical arrangement of objects within a scene becomes part of a broader symbolic network, guiding the observant viewer toward hidden insight. Beyond their immediate religious or moral significance, symbolic objects often participate in layered storytelling. Artists integrated them into narrative sequences, foreshadowing events, reflecting inner states, or echoing broader themes. A défi, cup, for instance, might not merely signify the Eucharist but also hint at sacrifice, suffering, or the fragility of human life, particularly if placed near a figure poised in tension or reflection. Instruments can signal joy, divine harmony, or the fleeting nature of earthly pleasures. Books may hold the weight of knowledge, authority, or hidden truths yet to be revealed. By incorporating these objects into subtle narrative frameworks, artists expanded the richness and interpretive depth of their works. The symbolic potency of objects often relies on cultural and theological context. Keys, books, cups, and instruments held specific associations depending on era, region, and religious tradition. For example, a golden key might denote papal authority or spiritual power, whereas an iron key could represent temporal control or human effort. A manuscript with illuminated lettering might reference sacred knowledge accessible only to the devout. or educated, emphasizing the layered hierarchy of wisdom. Musical instruments, too, carried varied meanings. A harp might symbolize heavenly harmony, a lute could evoke earthly pleasure, and a tambourine could reference celebration or ritual. Understanding these cultural nuances allows modern observers to appreciate the richness and intentionality behind each object's inclusion. Symbolic objects also function as mnemonic devices, guiding the viewer's memory and reflection. A key might remind the faithful of responsibility, trust, or moral vigilance. A cup may evoke meditation on the Last Supper, personal sacrifice, or communal ritual. A book might prompt contemplation of scripture, ethics, or divine mystery. Even mundane objects, when deliberately chosen and placed, carry latent moral, spiritual, or philosophical weight, transforming simple observation into reflective engagement. In this sense, symbolic objects serve both narrative and didactic purposes, bridging aesthetic beauty and contemplative insight. Artists frequently used objects to create subtle contrasts, tensions, or juxtapositions within a scene. A luminous cup placed beside a shadowed figure could evoke the interplay between divine illumination and human frailty. A book left open on a table, juxtaposed with a closed or hidden key, might signify the tension between revealed and concealed knowledge. Instruments lying unused or out of place may imply potential, loss, or moral caution. These interactions, often quiet and almost imperceptible, reward careful observation and reflection, allowing viewers to gradually uncover layers of meaning embedded within the composition. Hidden meanings within symbolic objects often intersect with other visual codes. A key placed on a patterned floor may align with numerological sequences. A book may incorporate subtle lettering or inscriptions that connect with hidden narratives. An instrument may echo the tonal symbolism suggested by color or gesture. Through such layering, artists created intricate networks of significance where each object operates as a node linking narrative, symbol, and moral reflection. Observers, attuned to these connections, experience art as a multidimensional landscape of discovery, insight, and contemplation. The scale and subtlety of these objects contribute to their mystery. Many symbolic objects are small, partially hidden, or rendered in muted tones, requiring patience and close attention. This deliberate concealment transforms viewing into an immersive experience, where slow observation is rewarded with discovery. The quiet revelation of a hidden key, a barely noticeable book, or a carefully positioned instrument evokes wonder, curiosity, and reflection. The observer is drawn into an almost meditative engagement, piecing together the symbolic language of the artwork, moment by moment. In some cases, objects serve as personal or political commentary. Patrons, donors, or contemporaries may be referenced. Through objects, a book symbolizing scholarly achievement, a cup representing generosity, or an instrument reflecting leisure or status. Artists cleverly integrated these items to honor, critique, or subtly comment on individuals within the composition. These hidden layers create a dialogue across time, inviting viewers to interpret social, ethical, and personal significance alongside the broader religious narrative. The symbolic resonance of objects extends to temporal and spiritual reflection. Keys remind viewers of access to knowledge, authority, or spiritual responsibility. Books suggest ongoing learning and divine revelation. Cups evoke cycles of life, ritual, and communion. Instruments recall harmony, mortality, and the beauty of ephemeral experience. By embedding these objects, artists ensured that the work communicates across layers, temporal, spiritual, ethical, and aesthetic, creating a dynamic, contemplative space for the viewer. Emotionally, the discovery of symbolic objects produces calm intrigue, a quiet sense of revelation, and reflective satisfaction. Observers experience a subtle thrill as meaning emerges from what initially appeared incidental. Each object discovered expands understanding of the narrative, deepens engagement with the composition, and highlights the artist's skill, intention, and philosophical depth. This slow accumulation of insight mirrors the broader journey of contemplation, encouraging mindfulness, attention, and wonder. Artists also leverage the ambiguity of objects to engage interpretation. A key may symbolize literal access or spiritual authority. A cup may represent ritual, sacrifice, or desire. A book may denote wisdom, secrecy, or moral instruction. This multiplicity of potential meanings invites the observer to explore, question, and reflect, turning each viewing into a personalized dialogue with the artwork. Symbolic objects thus function as interpretive catalysts, encouraging deep engagement and thoughtful discovery. Ultimately, symbolic objects illustrate the meticulous craftsmanship, philosophical depth, and reflective intention inherent in historical religious art. They remind viewers that meaning is rarely confined to the immediately visible. Every small item, carefully chosen and placed, carries layers of spiritual, moral, and aesthetic significance. Observers who recognize these objects participate in an intricate visual dialogue, discovering hidden dimensions, ethical cues, and contemplative messages woven into the composition with subtle mastery. The calm intrigue of symbolic objects allows viewers to experience art not merely as representation, but as exploration. Each discovery, whether a key, book, cup, or instrument, serves as a quiet revelation, offering insight into the artist's intention, cultural context, and the philosophical or spiritual currents shaping the work. Observers become active participants, uncovering hidden meaning, connecting past and present, and engaging with the layered, contemplative world that the artwork invites them to inhabit. By attending to symbolic objects, one realizes that historical, religious art is more than its overt narrative. It is an intricate tapestry, where every detail, from gesture to color to object, carries significance. Keys open hidden meanings, books preserve wisdom, cups hold ritual resonance, and instruments whisper harmony and transience. Each object encourages reflection, rewards careful observation, and reveals the quiet, contemplative artistry of those who painted not only what the eye could see, but what the mind and spirit could perceive. In conclusion, the symbolic object transforms seemingly minor details into vessels of profound meaning. Through careful placement, cultural association, narrative integration, and subtle layering, these objects create a calm, immersive, and reflective experience. Observers who look beyond the obvious discover a hidden world of spiritual insight, moral guidance, and contemplative intrigue. In this way, the artwork becomes both a visual feast and a meditative journey, where every object speaks in its quiet, symbolic voice, inviting attention, reflection, and discovery. Step beyond a single artwork, beyond a single culture or time period, and allow your gaze to travel across centuries and continents. Hidden messages in art are not bound by geography, style, or historical context. Rather, they form a silent continuum, a shared human impulse to communicate beyond the obvious, to embed meaning for the observant, the patient, and the attentive. Across civilizations, from medieval Europe to Byzantine mosaics, from Islamic manuscripts to East Asian scrolls, from indigenous carvings to sacred murals, artists, scribes, and craftsmen have left traces of hidden narratives, symbolic objects, and coded messages that echo a universal desire to convey secrets in plain sight. This is the story of human creativity transcending borders, a quiet testament to our collective fascination with mystery, meaning, and subtle communication. Patterns repeat across time and space, often arising independently in different cultures, yet expressing similar concerns, values, and aspirations. The use of symbolic numbers, hidden eyes, and secondary narratives appears in European manuscripts as well as in Islamic geometric art, in Asian brush painting, and in indigenous carvings. Triangles, circles, spirals, and other geometric motifs recur with astonishing consistency, each culture interpreting these forms according to its own cosmology and philosophy. The repetition of such patterns suggests that the human mind seeks order, meaning, and spiritual resonance in visual form, regardless of geography or historical circumstance. These patterns reveal a shared impulse to communicate complex truths subtly, to encode messages accessible only to the attentive observer, and to intertwine aesthetic beauty with moral, spiritual, and philosophical significance. Even symbolic objects traverse cultures in form and function, Keys, cups, books, and instruments, while interpreted differently, appear again and again as vessels of hidden meaning. A key may signify access to sacred knowledge in a European painting, spiritual authority in an Islamic manuscript, or metaphysical gateways in East Asian art. Cups and vessels may represent ritual, transformation, or human fragility across traditions. Books, scrolls, or inscribed objects embody the preservation of knowledge, moral instruction, and divine wisdom in multiple contexts. Instruments resonate with harmony, celebration, or spiritual resonance, linking the sensory with the symbolic. By studying these objects across cultures, one begins to see an almost invisible thread of human curiosity, creativity, and reflective depth that spans continents and centuries. Color symbolism, too, demonstrates this cross-cultural resonance. Red evokes passion, sacrifice, or vitality in European and Asian contexts alike. Blue suggests divinity, serenity, or transcendence across traditions. Green symbolizes renewal, life, or fertility universally. Gold and luminous hues denote sanctity, value, or spiritual light. Though each culture adapts these colors to its own philosophy, religion, or aesthetics, the repetition of symbolic associations underscores the universality of visual language as a medium for hidden communication. Color, combined with form, gesture, and object, creates a coded system that transcends written language and literal narrative, speaking directly to human perception, intuition, and emotion. Secondary narratives and hidden details also span cultures. In medieval European manuscripts, minuscule marginalia tell parallel or ironic stories. In Japanese scrolls, background figures enact subtle dramas that complement the central narrative. In Middle Eastern illuminated manuscripts, geometric patterns and calligraphic flourishes conceal moral and spiritual lessons. Across continents, the layering of visible and hidden stories reflects a shared fascination with duality, public and private, sacred and mundane, obvious and concealed. Artists everywhere understood that meaning could operate on multiple levels, rewarding the patient observer and allowing works to communicate over generations. The repetition of geometric, symbolic, and narrative patterns also highlights a profound human desire to leave traces across time. These hidden messages function as bridges between past and present, creating dialogue between artist, observer, and future generations. An illuminated manuscript from medieval Europe may resonate with patterns found in a Ming Dynasty painting or a pre-Columbian carving. Across time, these works communicate similar concerns: morality, spirituality, philosophical reflection, and the urge to encode secrets for those willing to notice. This universality underscores a shared human impulse to transcend immediate reality and participate in a dialogue that is timeless and cross-cultural. Numerology, too, transcends borders. Numbers hold spiritual significance in European Christian art, Islamic geometric patterns, and Asian philosophical systems. Sequences such as 3, 7, 12, and 40 recur globally, each adapted to local cosmologies but serving a similar purpose: to encode meaning, create visual harmony, and connect the human with the divine. Observers who recognize these numeric patterns across cultures experience a profound sense of connection, witnessing the universality of symbolic thinking and the human drive to encode truth, order, and meaning in visual form. Hidden eyes, hands, angels, or spiritual motifs also appear cross-culturally, reflecting a shared fascination with the unseen, the spiritual, and the subtly moral. Artists embed these motifs to convey surveillance, guidance, protection, or moral instruction, creating layers of observation that reward careful study. While stylistic execution varies, from the detailed realism of European painting to the fluid abstraction of East Asian brushwork, the underlying intent remains strikingly similar: to communicate moral, spiritual, and philosophical truths quietly, thoughtfully, and often playfully, leaving mysteries for those attuned to notice. Patterns repeated across borders also reveal human universality in attention to the minute. Marginalia, hidden gestures, subtle lighting effects, symbolic animals, and secondary narratives exist in multiple contexts, suggesting a shared fascination with detail, discovery, and layered meaning. These elements often reward patience and observation, creating a sense of intimate dialogue between creator and observer. The careful placement of a hidden animal, a subtle gesture or a symbolic object, invites contemplation and reflection, emphasizing that human perception and curiosity are constant across time and culture. Moreover, the persistence of these patterns highlights a collective acknowledgement of secrecy, discretion, and layered communication. Across continents, artists understood that not all meaning needed to be overt. Secrets could be encoded in symbols, gestures, numbers, or objects. This deliberate concealment invites the viewer to become an active participant, piecing together clues, interpreting signals, and engaging with layers of meaning. It demonstrates that the human desire to communicate, to embed wisdom and commentary, transcends language, geography, and epoch, linking civilizations in a shared quest for understanding and reflection. The reflective and awe-inspiring quality of these repeated patterns lies in their silent persistence. Across centuries, hidden motifs survive, patiently waiting for discovery. Marginal inscriptions, symbolic objects, encoded numerology, and hidden narratives have endured, speaking to attentive eyes across generations. Observers today can experience the same thrill, curiosity, and meditative engagement that their historical counterparts felt, realizing that these messages were intended not merely for immediate consumption, but as enduring dialogues across space and time. These patterns also suggest a shared human yearning for connection, understanding, and transcendence. Through art, humans across cultures have sought to communicate ethical principles, spiritual truths, moral warnings, and philosophical reflection. Hidden messages, subtle cues, and symbolic motifs allow artists to bridge the personal and communal, the temporal and eternal, crafting works that endure beyond their original context. Observers who recognize these patterns experience both delight and contemplation, a sense of intimacy with the past, and an appreciation of the universality of human thought and expression. In addition, repeated patterns foster a sense of cultural resonance and continuity. They demonstrate that despite geographical distances, technological differences, and historical divides, human beings consistently express curiosity, devotion, moral reflection, and creative ingenuity through subtle communication. Hidden motifs function as a universal language, readable across centuries by those willing to look closely, think deeply, and perceive the quiet, deliberate whisper of artistry and intention. The awe-inspiring aspect of these patterns lies in their quiet omnipresence. A hidden hand gesture in a European fresco resonates with subtle gestures in Persian miniatures. A numerological sequence in a Christian manuscript parallels arrangements in Buddhist mandalas. A symbolic object in a South American carving mirrors motifs in Asian religious art. These cross-cultural echoes testify to the universality of human creativity, the shared pursuit of hidden knowledge, and the enduring fascination with the unseen and the subtle. Observers who discern these connections are invited into a contemplative state, recognizing the continuity of human expression and the commonality of thought across history. Ultimately, the repeated patterns across cultures and centuries illustrate that the human desire to communicate secretly, symbolically, and profoundly is universal. Artists, scribes, and craftsmen have consistently embedded hidden messages, spiritual symbols, and layered narratives in their work, inviting reflection, meditation, and discovery. The persistence of these motifs reminds us that the impulse to encode meaning, to speak quietly across generations, and to reward attentive observation is a fundamental aspect of human creativity. Recognizing these patterns fosters a sense of shared humanity and cross-cultural empathy. By tracing hidden motifs, symbolic objects, and numerological sequences across borders, observers connect not only with the artwork itself, but with the minds, spirits, and philosophies of people from distant times and places. The act of discovery becomes contemplative, awe-inspiring, and deeply reflective, highlighting the timeless, universal nature of human ingenuity and subtle communication. In the end, hidden messages transcending geography and time reveal a silent, enduring conversation between civilizations. Artists and observers, separated by centuries and miles, participate in a shared exploration of meaning, morality, spirituality, and aesthetic beauty. Patterns repeated across cultures invite meditation, reflection, and wonder, reminding us that despite differences in language, faith, or geography, the human desire to encode, conceal, and discover meaning is a thread that unites us all. These messages, quiet yet persistent, inspire reflection, awe, and a profound appreciation for the subtle intelligence, creativity, and universality embedded in human expression. At the culmination of our journey through hidden messages, subtle gestures, and secret codes embedded within centuries of religious art, we arrive at the most profound revelation. The final message is not hidden in the margins, the geometry, or the symbolic objects alone. It resides within the viewer themselves. Across all these paintings, manuscripts, and sculptures, the artists have left a silent invitation, an eternal whisper that reaches out through time, space, and culture. They are not only addressing the faithful of their own era, the scholars who commissioned their work, or the secret societies privy to hidden numerology. They are speaking to every observer who approaches their work with patience, attention, and curiosity. The art itself becomes a mirror, reflecting both historical intention and personal introspection, urging viewers to contemplate, reflect, and discover meaning unique to their own consciousness. This final hidden message transcends any single narrative, symbol, or motif. It is present in the gentle curve of a figure's hand, the subtle fold of a robe, the delicate placement of a tiny object, and even the spacing between figures and forms. Each detail, carefully considered and deliberately crafted, exists to guide perception, encouraging slow, thoughtful engagement. It asks the observer to pause, to look beyond the immediate, and to cultivate a meditative awareness that allows discovery to unfold naturally. Here, the viewer becomes an active participant rather than a passive onlooker. Observation transforms into dialogue, contemplation becomes communion, and visual experience evolves into personal reflection. The eternal whisper operates on multiple levels. On one hand, it is the historical, cultural, and spiritual knowledge encoded by the artist, a message about faith, morality, cosmic order, and human experience. On the other, it is an individualized, internalized communication, urging the observer to consider their own life, choices, and beliefs. A hidden hand gesture may invite one to reflect on the power of guidance or compassion. A concealed book may prompt thoughts on personal wisdom and ethical responsibility. A subtle animal motif may encourage empathy, awareness, or connection with the natural world. In this way, the art bridges the temporal and the personal, offering insight into the past while simultaneously reflecting the present inner state of the observer. Central to this final revelation is the understanding that meaning is never fully prescribed. The art provides tools, symbols, and layers, yet it leaves space for the mind and heart of the viewer to fill in interpretation. The numerical patterns, hidden eyes, symbolic objects, secondary narratives, and cross-cultural echoes that we have explored over the course of this journey all converge to create a rich tapestry. But their ultimate significance depends on the engagement, perception, and reflection of those who encounter them. In essence, the artist invites the observer to co-create the meaning, to participate in the unveiling, and to listen carefully for the whisper embedded in the visual language of the work. This eternal whisper is meditative and hypnotic by design. The very act of observing closely, of slowing one's gaze and tracing the subtle interactions between figures, objects, and light, evokes a state of quiet introspection. Viewers begin to notice patterns in their own perception, the way attention lingers on certain forms, the emotional responses elicited by specific gestures, and the personal resonance of symbols interpreted through one's own experiences. This process creates a unique, almost hypnotic engagement, wherein time seems suspended, and the observer is drawn into a contemplative dialogue with the art. Each hidden detail, every encoded message, and all carefully orchestrated visual cues, become points of meditation, guiding the mind toward reflection, insight, and emotional resonance. The genius of this final hidden message lies in its universality. Across centuries, cultures, and artistic traditions, artists have understood that the most enduring communication is that which transcends context, speaking not only to the learned, the devout, or the historically privileged, but to every individual who approaches the work with intention. The whispers embedded in the folds of drapery, the subtle gestures of figures, the interplay of light and shadow, and the quiet placement of symbolic objects are invitations to engage, interpret, and reflect. They remind us that art is not a monologue but a conversation, timeless, evolving, and deeply personal. In contemplating the eternal whisper, one also becomes aware of the temporal dialogue between the past and the present. Each painting, manuscript, or sculpture carries the imprint of an artist who lived in a specific time and place, grappling with their own cultural, spiritual, and ethical context. Yet by listening closely to the whisper, the modern observer can access a dialogue that bridges centuries, linking individual consciousness across time. Hidden messages in the work serve as conduits for empathy, philosophical inquiry, and moral reflection, allowing viewers to experience a profound sense of continuity with the human experience. This dialogue underscores the timelessness of curiosity, introspection, and spiritual engagement, a reminder that while history passes, perception, awareness, and reflection endure. Emotionally, the eternal whisper resonates in subtle yet profound ways. Observers may experience awe, quiet wonder, nostalgia, curiosity, or introspection. A moment of recognition, a hidden gesture noticed, a symbol understood, or a pattern discerned, evokes a personal revelation, however fleeting. The artwork ceases to be a static object and becomes an immersive experience, where the mind and heart are gently guided toward contemplation. In this sense, the final hidden message is as much about the observer as the work itself. It transforms passive viewing into active personal engagement and ordinary observation into meditation and insight. The whisper also encourages ethical reflection and self-awareness. Many of the hidden messages explored throughout our journey, numerical patterns, symbolic objects, secondary narratives, subtle gestures, and cross-cultural motifs, convey moral, spiritual, and philosophical significance. By guiding the observer to notice these details, the artist invites consideration of values such as patience, empathy, humility, awareness, and attentiveness. The eternal whisper becomes a tool for self-exploration, encouraging viewers to reflect not only on the external world depicted in the artwork, but on their own responses, attitudes, and understanding. In addition, the eternal whisper reinforces the joy of discovery. Hidden messages reward observation, patience, and curiosity, creating a sense of accomplishment and wonder. Observers become explorers of both the artwork and their own perception, uncovering layers of meaning gradually over time. This slow meditative engagement mirrors the rhythms of life itself, where understanding, insight, and growth emerge incrementally, often through careful attention, reflection, and contemplation. The art teaches that revelation is a process, not an instant, and that true engagement requires stillness, mindfulness, and openness to subtlety. Furthermore, the whisper is transformative. It transforms not only the perception of a single work of art, but the way observers approach all observation, interpretation, and reflection. By attuning to subtle cues, noticing hidden patterns, and engaging with layered meaning, viewers cultivate heightened awareness, emotional resonance, and intellectual curiosity. The final hidden message is thus not confined to the canvas or page. It spills into life itself, shaping perception, deepening understanding, and encouraging a contemplative approach to both beauty and meaning in the world. Across all the works we have explored, the eternal whisper remains consistent. Observe attentively, reflect deeply, and embrace the layers of meaning that extend beyond the immediately visible. It teaches that the act of seeing is also an act of understanding, that subtlety carries its own power, and that hidden messages, whether encoded in geometry, light, gesture, object, or narrative, invite personal discovery. The whisper reminds us that art is not a static artifact, but a living dialogue between creator and observer, a dynamic space where meaning is co-created and insight unfolds quietly, patiently, and profoundly. In the final meditation, the eternal whisper reveals its ultimate lesson, that each viewer, through attentiveness and reflection, participates in the continuation of meaning, bridging centuries of human thought, creativity, and spirituality. Hidden messages, repeated patterns, symbolic objects, and subtle narratives converge to guide awareness inward, fostering reflection, wonder, and emotional resonance. The art becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the historical and cultural context of its creation, but also the personal experience, intuition, and contemplation of each observer. By embracing the eternal whisper, viewers become participants in a timeless cross-cultural conversation. They recognize that the act of noticing, reflecting, and interpreting is itself a form of engagement with human history, spirituality, and creativity. Every subtle gesture, hidden object, and encoded symbol becomes a guide, encouraging mindfulness, moral reflection, and a deepened appreciation for the intricate, layered genius of human expression. The whisper is eternal precisely because it is personal. Every observer carries their own context, experience, and insight into the dialogue, making each interaction unique, meaningful, and enduring. Ultimately, the eternal whisper reminds us that hidden messages are not merely historical curiosities, they are invitations to pause, observe, and reflect, to connect with the past and the present, to discover meaning that resonates within the mind, heart, and spirit. Each layer of art, from microtexts in manuscript margins to symbolic objects, from secondary narratives to cross-cultural patterns, culminates in this final, profound message. The art is not complete until it meets the observer, until its whisper is heard, contemplated, and integrated into consciousness. It is a call to attentiveness, reflection, and intimate dialogue, a call that transcends time, culture, and space, and echoes endlessly through the quiet recesses of perception. In this way, the eternal whisper is both an ending and a beginning. It concludes the journey through hidden messages, yet simultaneously opens a new path for contemplation, introspection, and discovery. Every viewer, by attending, noticing, and reflecting, perpetuates the legacy of these hidden messages, carrying the dialogue forward into new contexts, new interpretations, and new generations. The whisper is, therefore, truly eternal, not confined to paint, parchment, or stone, but alive in the attentive minds and hearts of those who choose to listen. As we draw this journey to a close, it becomes clear that religious art is far more than what meets the eye. Across centuries, cultures, and continents, artists have woven intricate tapestries of meaning, embedding subtle messages that speak to patience, observation, and reflection. From microtexts hidden in manuscript margins to the symbolic placement of keys, cups, and instruments, each detail invites the observer to look closer, think deeper, and discover layers of intention that often escape casual attention. These 17 hidden messages, though diverse in form and execution, converge into a single enduring truth. Art is a dialogue between creator and viewer, a bridge between past and present, and a testament to the human impulse to communicate across time and space. The first whispers came from the margins, where scribes concealed prayers, dedications, and warnings in microscopic text. These tiny annotations, easily overlooked, reveal the personal devotion, political subtlety, and quiet humor of their creators. The act of hiding these messages suggests that meaning is often intimate, meant for those who observe with care. The messenger in the margins reminds us that significance is not always obvious, that even the smallest detail can carry profound weight. Next, the coded hands of figures in Renaissance paintings illustrate how gestures can convey more than narrative. They encode spiritual guidance, moral instruction, and secret signals for those attuned to subtleties. Symbolic hands become a quiet language, a bridge connecting the seen and unseen, the ordinary and the divine. Observing these gestures teaches patience, attention, and an appreciation for nuance in communication. Eyes, too, were rarely what they seemed. Artists embedded hidden eyes in fabrics, shadows, and reflections, suggesting divine observation or unseen truths. These hidden gazes evoke a sense of presence beyond the visible, reminding viewers that understanding requires careful attention and that perception is as much about what we sense as what we overlook. Sacred geometry, recurring across compositions, further illustrates the intersection of aesthetic brilliance and hidden meaning. Triangles, circles, and spirals carry philosophical, spiritual, and moral significance, subtly guiding the observer's eye and reinforcing the harmony between human understanding and the divine order. This geometry of the divine reminds us that patterns, order, and proportion can reveal truths beyond immediate recognition. Animals, often overlooked, participate quietly in hidden narratives. Lambs, birds, serpents, and other creatures carry symbolic messages of morality, renewal, or warning. Their presence adds layers of interpretation, gently encouraging reflection on the human condition and the natural world. Light and shadow, manipulated with ethereal precision, create visual whispers. Illuminated folds, candlelight glints, and shadowed corners reveal messages only visible under certain conditions, emphasizing temporality, perception, and the interplay between illumination and concealment. The light and shadow whispers illustrate that the environment itself can become a vehicle for meaning, prompting contemplation of how perspective shapes understanding. Micro-writing, cryptic letters, and subtle inscriptions transform the hidden letter into a repository of secrets, connecting patrons, artists, and viewers in a silent web of knowledge. The masked patron, meanwhile, reminds us that faces and figures may conceal identity, influence, or intention, offering hidden commentary on vanity, social hierarchy, or human ambition. Forbidden symbols, demonic motifs, and subtle moral warnings evoke tension and curiosity. From nudity and taboo to the devil's signature, these hidden elements explore human frailty, ethical boundaries, and the ever-present contrast between virtue and vice. Observing these symbols inspires reflection on morality, temptation, and the choices we make, both historically and personally. Angels, spiritual beings, and symbolic objects provide gentle guidance, offering comfort, inspiration, and wonder. The angelic echo and the symbolic object demonstrate how small details, a figure in disguise, a cup, a book, or an instrument, can convey ethical, spiritual, or philosophical meaning across generations. These elements remind viewers that reflection often begins with the unnoticed and that insight emerges gradually through careful observation and contemplation. Color and numerology, as explored in Color Speaks and Numbers Never Lie, reveal the deliberate coding of meaning through visual and mathematical design. Red, blue, green, and gold, along with sequences and arrangements of numbers, offer moral, spiritual, and mystical significance, subtly guiding the observer's interpretation and eliciting emotional and contemplative response. Secondary narratives, hidden within backgrounds or architectural details, provide parallel stories that enrich the main narrative. The story. Within the story rewards patience and perception, reminding us that the world is complex and multi-layered, and that truth often exists alongside subtle irony, human folly, or alternative perspectives. Patterns repeated across cultures, and centuries as highlighted in Across Borders and Centuries, show a universal human desire to encode meaning, transmit knowledge, and communicate secretly. From east to west, north to south, civilizations have independently discovered similar methods of hidden storytelling, revealing the shared threads of curiosity, creativity, and reflection that unite humanity across time and geography. Finally, we arrive at the eternal whisper, the message directed not outward but inward. The ultimate hidden message resides in the observer, inviting contemplation, introspection, and the personal discovery of meaning. The art does not merely speak, it listens, responds, and reflects back, providing a mirror in which we can see ourselves, our curiosity, and our capacity for wonder. This final whisper teaches that observation, reflection, and engagement transform art from a static object into a living dialogue, where meaning is co-created between creator and viewer. Together, these 17 hidden messages reveal the interplay of devotion, secrecy, and artistic genius. They demonstrate that every brushstroke, gesture, object, and fold was purposeful, carefully chosen to guide perception, provoke thought, and inspire reflection. They remind us that beauty is inseparable from meaning, that the seen and unseen exist in dialogue, and that patient observation is rewarded with insight, wonder, and even delight. As we leave this exploration, philosophical questions linger in the quiet of the mind. What other messages lie hidden, waiting to be discovered? How do these whispers from the past resonate with our lives today? What can patience, curiosity, and reflection teach us about perception, morality, and human creativity? These questions extend the journey beyond the artworks themselves, encouraging a contemplative engagement with the world around us. Ultimately, these hidden messages inspire awe not merely at artistic skill, but at human curiosity, intelligence, and imagination. They remind us that communication, reflection, and meaning are timeless pursuits, that secrets can bridge centuries, and that observation itself is a form of devotion. In this calm, contemplative, bedtime-style meditation, the viewer is left in wonder, aware that even as centuries pass, the whispers of hidden messages endure, quietly inviting attention, contemplation, and personal discovery. Through these artworks, the past speaks to the present, and the observer becomes a participant in a timeless, meditative dialogue. Each hidden gesture, symbol, number, or narrative is a testament to the enduring human desire to encode, conceal, and reveal meaning. And in listening carefully, in observing patiently, in reflecting deeply, we realize that these messages, though ancient, remain alive, eternal whispers across time calling us to see, to think, and to wonder.